Councilmember Monsiváis.
Here.
Councilmember Peters.
Here.
Councilmember Garcia.
Here.
Mayor Castile.
Here.
We're all here.
Mayor Pro Tem Reeves.
Thank you. Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we are thankful for this gathering to make decisions for our community. May we use only our best skills and judgment as we consider the merits and the pitfalls of each matter that's placed before us, and always act in accordance with what's best for our entire community and our fellow citizens. Let us be ever mindful of those who protect our freedom and safety on a daily basis while knowing that they may be placed in harm's way. Bless and protect them. As trusted servants, help us build our community to be stronger for all. Amen.
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 I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Okay, I think I have a number of people here for our first presentation for honoring the Martin Luther King Day. So if everybody that's here for that, if y'all would like to come up, join me up here at the... Okay, why don't, I'm going to let somebody introduce the group and kind of tell us a little bit about what's going to happen this next week. And
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor and the City Council. Thank you for the proclamation. But we're with, I'm Henry Ford. I'm the organizing vice president of the New Braunfels Martin Luther King March. Thank you. But we're members of the New Braunfels Martin Luther King Association, and we want to have a march for here in New Braunfels because, as we know, as I've said before in many interviews, San Antonio has the largest in the nation. Seguin has one of the oldest, if not the oldest. So I thought maybe we could have one here in New Braunfels, and not just for the march, but to try to bring the community together as one. You know, we look around the country now, we see so much hatred and a lot of racial tension. And hopefully with the march and through the Martin Luther King Association, we can help bring that peace and tranquility to the city of New Braunfels.
that's Monday at what time?
January 18th at 10 o'clock. And for those that want to be a part of it, if they can't walk, we have golf carts that would let them ride in the golf carts. We have buses, and we will be giving out T-shirts to the first 300 people that show up for the march. And we will start out at Psalms Park at South Liberty and San Antonio. We proceed to the square where we have a brief ceremony and welcome. And from there, we proceed down San Antonio to Santa Clara and then go over to First Baptist where we have our main ceremony. And our guest speaker would be Mr. Jay Williams, the Secretary of
The U.S. Assistant Secretary of the Chambers of Commerce of Economic Development will be our keynote speaker there at the ceremony, which will be held at First Baptist Church, where the pastor is Pastor Brad McLean.
And that's Pastor Franklin, Michael Franklin, who is our president. I serve as the vice president. Kathleen Kruger is our secretary. My wife, Gloria, who told me if I want to do something about it, go ahead and do it. But she's assistant secretary. Mr. Don Emmett, he was our acting treasurer, but he had to step down. And where's Susan? Oh, here she is. Oh, here's Kevin. Susan Tate is our advisor, along with Siobhan. Oh, there she is. That's Mrs. Franklin. And Kevin O'Toole. Now, Kevin, he didn't want a title, but he's done all the legwork. He's in the background, as he is now. But he's done so much for the committee, and we're so grateful for him and all the work that he's done.
I've got a proclamation for y'all. Oh, and John Michael.
John Michael, he was the one that got the ball rolling. John Michael is the one that got the ball rolling with the proclamation for the city council for the school system to accept Martin Luther King Day as a holiday.
Hi, I have a proclamation for y'all and for everyone else. Whereas each year America sets aside a day to remember a giant of our nation's history and a pioneer of the civil rights movement. During his lifelong struggle for justice and equality, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. gave mighty voice to the quiet hopes of millions, offered a redemptive path for the oppressed and oppressors alike, and led a nation to the mountaintop. He reminded us that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. On a hot summer day, he challenged America to make good on its founding promise, and he called on every lover of freedom to walk alongside their brothers and sisters. And whereas we honor all who marched, bled, and died for civil rights, we have celebrated the great victories of the last half century: civil rights and voting rights laws, new opportunities in classrooms and the workforce, a more fair and free America, not only for African Americans, but for us all. And whereas we also reminded that our journey is not complete, it is our task to build on the gains of the past generations, from challenging new barriers to the vote to ensuring the scales of justice work equally for all people. And where we must advance another cause central to both Dr. King's career and the civil rights movement: the dignity of good jobs, decent wages, equality in education, and a fair deal. Because America's promise is not only for the absent of oppression, but also the presence of opportunity. We must make our nation one where anyone willing to work hard is admitted into the ranks of a rising, thriving middle class. And whereas Dr. King taught us that an individual has not started living until he can rise above the narrow confines of his individualistic concerns of all humanity, and honoring his spirit, Americans across the country will come together for a day of service. By volunteering our time and our energy, we can build a stronger, healthier, and more resilient communities. Today, let us put aside our narrow ambitions, lift up one another, and march a little closer to the nation Dr. King envisioned. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Baron Castile, Mayor of the City of New Braunfels, Texas, do hereby proclaim January 18, 2015 as Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and I encourage all Americans to observe this day of appropriate civic, community, and service projects in the honor of Dr. King. And I have two proclamations for you all to share. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I just want to take this opportunity to verbally and officially invite the entire City Council to be a part of this, the first New Braunfels Inaugural March. And certainly we are very grateful for your support, Mayor Castile, along with Councilman George Green, who have done an outstanding job in aiding and helping us along the way. And by the way, they are both on the program as well to speak. And so thank you so much, sir, but consider yourselves officially invited to be a part of this wonderful historic moment.
Hi, I'm Sonia Chapa with Communities in Schools and my executive director, Chris Douglas. And we're here to talk about National Mentoring Month. We ask that anybody who has the opportunity to take time out of their day for about 30 minutes a week can work with any of our children at the various local schools. And National Mentoring Month, this is acknowledged across the nation, with the 14th being I Am a Mentor Day and the 21st being Thank Your Mentor Day. So whether you have an official mentor, professional, personal, or whether they even are aware that they've ever been a mentor, that's the day that we ask that you reach out and thank them for mentoring you in any way. And I hope that y'all will take the opportunity to pick up a brochure on your way out and consider being a mentor, or give me a call if you have any questions.
I have a proclamation for you all. Whereas in 2002, the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health and Mentor, the National Mentoring Partnership created the National Mentoring Month, and whereas the goals of the National Mentoring Month are to raise awareness of mentoring, recruit individuals to mentor, and encourage organizations to engage and integrate quality in mentoring into their efforts. And whereas a mentor is a caring, consistent presence who devotes time to a young person to help that a young person discover personal strengths and achieve their potential through a structured and trusting relationship. And whereas quality mentoring encourages positive choices, promotes self-esteem, supports academic achievement, and introduces young people to new ideas. And whereas mentoring programs have shown to be effective in combating school violence and discipline problems, substance abuse, incarceration, and truancy, and whereas research shows that young people who were at risk for not completing high school, but who had a mentor, were 55% more likely to be enrolled in college, 81% more likely to report participating regularly in sports or extracurricular activities, and 78% more likely to volunteer regularly in their communities. And whereas youth development experts agree that mentoring is critical to the social, emotional, and cognitive development of youth, helping them navigate the path to adulthood more successfully, and whereas mentors help young people set career goals and use their personal contacts to help young people meet industry professionals and find jobs, whereas all of the above listed benefits serve to link youth to economic opportunity while also strengthening the fiber of our communities, whereas despite these benefits, 1 in 3 youth will reach age 19 without a mentor, constituting a mentoring gap that demonstrates a need for collaboration and resources. Now, therefore, I, Baron Castile, Mayor of the City of New Braunfels, do hereby proclaim the month of January 2016 as National Mentoring Month and call upon public officials, businesses, and community leaders, educators, and encourage our constituents to observe this month with appropriate ceremonies, activities, and programs. Thank y'all.
Thank you all very much. Communities and Schools has been providing mentoring services in Comal County for since 2001, and we are very excited for the mentors that Sonia has been able to bring to our organization. And having been a mentor myself for more than 15 years, it is a way to change my life every day. I really encourage you all to think about it. Thank you, Barry.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, let's move on with the Parks Department. Mrs. Dickey, we have a presentation.
Good evening, Council. I have for you tonight a quick presentation and overview of the city's Parkland Dedication Ordinance. Parkland dedication ordinances have had a long history in the United States, 90 years, in fact, with the first ordinance being passed in 1919 in the state of Montana. The first ordinances were passed in the state of Texas in 1955 in Corpus Christi and in Deer Park in 1959. And now in Texas, over 100 cities have parkland dedication ordinances in our state. There are three options for paying for growth as far as parkland development. And parkland dedication is a long-accepted methodology for developing municipal parks by requiring developers to dedicate land for a park or by paying a fee for the city to acquire and develop those parks to serve new residents that their subdivisions will house. The philosophy is that because new development generates a need for additional park amenities, that the people responsible for creating that need should bear the cost of providing that new amenity, not the entire community. Neighborhood and community parks are intended to serve those people in the areas proximate to them. Our current ordinance was adopted in 2007 and is a part of the city's planning subdivision ordinances in Chapter 118. The purpose of the ordinance is to provide adequate recreation areas and amenities in the form of neighborhood parks as a function of subdivision development. Just a few details about the ordinance. It does apply to the ETJ. It does allow developers an option to pay fees in lieu of, and I'll go over that in a little bit more detail in a subsequent slide. There are 4 park quadrants that are established to hold parkland funds. The funds can be held for up to 10 years. Some funds are eligible for a refund if private parks are completed within regulations, and the funds must be spent within the same quadrant with which they are collected. This map shows you what our 4 park quadrants are and the current fund balances within each one of those quadrants. So at the top, it shows you what the overall balance is, and then the smaller number shows you what's available within each one of those quadrants. And like I had mentioned, some of those funds are restricted within each of those quadrants. For instance, some developers pay their fees in advance if they might be building an HOA park or a private park. And then if they meet all the criteria to build that HOA park, those funds are then refunded once all that criteria is met. So the fees are paid in advance at platting, and then once the criteria is met, the fees are refunded. So that's why there are 2 numbers there within each of those, and those are all tracked internally. So the components, there are 2 components to the ordinance. First, there is parkland dedication, and this is where the land component comes from. Currently, the ordinance requires 1 acre for every 150 dwelling units that's being developed. A developer can pay a fee in lieu of dedication equaling $100 per dwelling unit. This assumes that the land cost is $15,000 per acre. And remember, this ordinance was adopted back in 2007, and that was the average cost per acre back at that time. This cost per acre is a fee that will be reviewed as the ordinance is being updated. And we have had a question about why we would accept a fee in lieu of land dedication. And often, the developments that come in, the number of houses that come in are smaller that would only require maybe 1 or 1.5 acres per subdivision. And that's not an amount of acreage that the Parks Department or that the city would want to acquire little 1.5 acre parks throughout the community. For small parks. So the fee could be paid in lieu of, and then the idea being that a larger park would be purchased at a subsequent time, and a larger, a 5 acre, 3 to 5 acre neighborhood park would be purchased later and developed. So the second part of the fee is the park development fee, or the cost of what it would actually take to build the park. So first we get the land requirement, and then we get the money to build something on that land. That's the park development fees. And right now this fee is $500 per dwelling unit. And that fee is determined by the average cost of what it takes to develop a a 5-acre park at the time. Again, back in 2007, the cost assumed $500,000 to develop a 5-acre park. And once again, as this ordinance is being updated and reviewed, that cost is being updated and reviewed with the current cost of construction, and that fee will be looked at as well. So the total fee currently, as it stands in the ordinance, is $600 per dwelling unit if all fees are paid straight out. So park dedication fees have been used on 2 projects to date, including replacement of the playground at Eichel Park. And currently, the funds were just awarded to subsidize the budget at Morningside Park for the construction budget, the development of Morningside Park. As I mentioned, we are working on revising and updating this ordinance. The fees have not been updated since 2007, and they no longer accurately reflect the cost of land, the cost of purchasing the land per acre, and the cost of development and construction of the parks. We're also considering including community parks along with neighborhood parks. We are clarifying the requirements for private park development to better define the process for private parks and the city's role within that process. And then we'll be looking at adding a regular review and update of the ordinance so that the fees would be looked at regular intervals instead of a long pass like has just happened recently. And our next steps with the update to the ordinance include continuing our research, looking at best practices from other cities. We're meeting in 2 weeks with Dr. John Crompton from Texas A&M University, who is a leading researcher in this field. And then once the draft revised ordinance is prepared, it will be taken to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board as well as the Planning Commission for their input and feedback, and then finally back to City Council for your review and approval.
Stacey, thank you for the presentation. I'm really excited because I mean, you and I have, and talked to Robert too, like, we know that we need to get this done, you know. Do you happen to have, if you go back to the slide where it shows the $600 per dwelling unit?
Yes.
Do you happen to have that information? I know we've talked about it before, but how our city compares to other communities? Certainly it's on the low end.
I do not have anything tonight prepared that would show you where we fall in line with fees compared to other communities, but I can tell you it's all over the place. And really, in having some initial conversations with Dr. Crompton, what we really need to look at is what applies to our community and what the actual cost of the construction and the purchase of land would be, and make that proximate to our community. Okay. And so that's what, you know, we'll be trying to make sure that that's fair and concise for our community.
And then since we're coming on the 10-year mark, and I guess sometime in the near future when it was the ordinance became in effect, that's certainly not a milestone that I or we want to reach, you know, the 10 years. So what kind of timeline are you looking at where something, maybe 6 months, 8 months?
To have an ordinance back for your review?
Correct.
Oh, I would say in several months.
Okay.
It would be ready.
Well, the question is, are there any current fees in that list you showed that are about to expire?
I don't believe there are, because what happened is when the ordinance was passed in 2007, most plats got grandfathered. Okay. And so there was a period of time when nothing was coming in. So even though the ordinance was passed in 2007, there was...
The clock's not about to expire. It'd be good
Correct.
to include that when you come back with your update.
I certainly will. Good point. Be happy to.
Stacey, thank you for the information. Thank you for the information, especially the fees in lieu. But 2 other questions. On the quadrants, you say the funds are held for 10 years. What happens if a 10-year period comes up? What happens with those funds?
The developer would need to request a refund from the city in order to get that refund back.
On the 4-quadrant slide that you showed us, the amount of money involved, and then you mentioned about Eichel in Morningside. Are the figures reflected in that slide after those things happened, or?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
thank you.
So if I can piggyback on that, I know when we were talking about the master plan for Morningside Park, one of the big concerns was that restrooms and shade structures were cut out of the master plan for now. But if we have $188,200 in that quadrant, and you said the restroom would cost about $100,000, is there a reason why we couldn't use this money to make sure we have a potty?
Right, and you may recall that during our presentation for the Morningside construction contract, we did mention, but there was a lot going on that night, I do understand, that as the construction got underway and we were able to see what our contingencies were, that we would want to come back and talk about the contingencies and any additional fees in the park development funds to see if we could add anything back into the contract for exactly those reasons, whatever the next priority would be. There are several things that we are purchasing outside of the contract with MAC Inc., including playgrounds and a couple of other equipment items, so that we don't have to pay the overhead on those, and those will come out of those fees as well. So, yes, ma'am.
It sounds like maybe some of these fees are already earmarked
Yes.
for things. Maybe when you come back, if you can tell us out of all these funds available, if they're already earmarked for something, then they're not really available.
Yes, I will clarify that for Morningside Park. The amount that's been awarded for the contract for MAC is already taken out of that amount, which is what Councilmember Reeves had asked about. But the amounts that have been looked at for the, I would say, direct expenses from the city have not been taken out of there yet, and I will correct that for you.
Okay, and I got a lot of feedback after the last council meeting we had about the Morningside Park, and that cutting out the restrooms and the shade structures was a big deal. And we see that in tonight's
Yes,
agenda
I know,
item, the
yes.
feedback of what the parents want to see. And at the All Abilities Park, and it is kind of the same thing. So I'd hate for
Right.
us to move forward with Morningside without having some plan for that.
Definitely.
Stacy, would it be wise to go ahead and have the restroom bid as an alternate? You don't have to take it.
I believe it was bid as an alternate. Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes, I'm sorry, it is a buy board item, so we can move on that at any time.
Oh,
The restroom is a buy board item.
Oh, it's a
Yes.
self-contained unit?
Yes,
then?
sir.
Okay, all right, thank you.
It's coming back to me.
Any other questions? All right, thank you. Mr. Jewell? Oh, wait, I'm sorry. As with all presentations, anyone wishing to address the presentation, if you'll please step up to the podium, state your name and address, please limit to 5 minutes or less. Okay, with that, Mr. Jewell?
Thank you, Mayor Castile, members of the council. Jeff Jewell, Development Coordinator. Tonight, you're going to be hearing a presentation from Mr. Mark Feaster with JES Development. JES is proposing to build and develop a senior housing complex on Goodwin Lane. Mr. Feaster will be giving an overview of the project, of the development team, as well as what they are requesting from the city to support their application. With that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Feaster.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I am Mark Feaster with JES Development, and I certainly appreciate the opportunity to discuss this project with you all today. I really want to make this informal as we run through this short presentation, so if you have any questions at any time, feel free to interrupt. We don't have to go clear through to the end, the whole question. So, just going to give you a quick overview as far as the location, the community itself, the residential units, the development team, and then obviously why I'm here discussing this with you all this evening. As Jeff mentioned, the location is at 2753 Goodwin Lane. It's a 17-acre tract, and what we're proposing is 120 units for seniors age 62 and older. And I will say that these communities target active seniors. There's not an assisted living component to the development. It's senior residents that live on their own and can take care of themselves and provide their own means. Total estimated construction cost of the units itself right now is $11,840,000 with a total development cost, including architects, engineering, and all of that, of $16,935,000. This is the initial site plan that we're proposing. As I said, it's going to be on 17 acres, consists of 15 buildings, all single story. We do have some renditions in the presentation a little later, and I also left some photos that I took this morning in Salado of a project up there that will look almost exactly like this one that's under construction. The only thing missing on this site plan, the clubhouse is in the upper right-hand corner, and we have added a pool to the development. So there will be a pool that kind of tucks into the back of the clubhouse. This is the rendition. What we typically do with our developments is fit it into the environment that we come into. So this one will have the Texas limestone and then the rough cedar accents. It'll be 100% masonry. I think it's right now the percentages are at like 75% stone and 25% the hardy cement board. As far as the amenities are concerned, we'll have approximately 5,500 square foot community building. As I mentioned earlier, a pool, a gazebo with grills. We have a community room with a kitchen in it that the tenants in our other facilities put to really good use. Laundry facility, fitness center, a community garden, a business center, and then the building will also house a leasing office with a full-time manager on site. Yeah, there's a percentage, 75% stone, 25% fiber cement board exteriors. These are pictures of existing projects that we have, and that gives you an idea of what the interior finishes will look like. I also gave Jeff a few portfolios of existing projects that we have done throughout the states that we operate in. We do upgrade to 30-year architectural shingles, and again, this is an existing one. I believe this project's in Georgia. Proposed unit mix. You can see there we'll have 1 bedroom and 2 bedroom. We do have a market component. In this particular slide, we're showing 15 market rate units. I just got an updated pro forma before I walked in here, and we are somewhere around 23 to 25 market rate units. So it'll be both affordable and market rate. As I said before, 120 units, 36 one-bedroom at approximately 735 square feet, 84 two-bedrooms at 922, full kitchens with energy compliant appliances, ceiling fans in the living room and the bedroom, washer-dryer connections, window coverings, carpet, and vinyl flooring. The development team, JES Development, has been doing this for 30 years. This program, we develop under the Federal Income Tax Credit Program. It was implemented by Ronald Reagan back in 1986 as part of his tax reform, and it was the primary goal was to get the government out of affordable housing and to spur private developers using private funds to get into the business. And Jeff Smith, who is the owner of JES, was one of the first in the state of Missouri to utilize this program. All the dollars that go into it is private money. We raise it through the sale of the tax credits and/or loans. The architect is Martin Riley Architects. They're out of Atlanta, Georgia. And then the general contractor will be Fairway Construction. That's our company. And then the property manager is Fairway Management, and again, that's one of our companies. As I mentioned earlier, 30 years experience by JES. We've done over 125 apartment communities with over 4,300 residential units. And we develop, our home office is in Columbia, Missouri, but we've developed in Missouri, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, and then throughout the Southeast, South Carolina, Tennessee, Georgia, excuse me, and also in New Mexico. Mentioned the architect. They're out of Atlanta, started in 1969, and they've won several awards developing this type of property. Fairway Construction has been at this for 27 years with over 130 apartment communities, finished over 4,500 apartment units, and a total of $375 million in construction value completed. Property management is, again, Fairway Management. We currently manage over 7,500 units in 170 communities. Average 97% occupancy in the whole portfolio. And again, there's the states that we're primarily active in. We actually are involved in other states besides those. The reason that I'm here today, this program operates on a scoring basis and is administered with Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs. One of the scoring items is support from the city in which we go into. And so what we will be asking you at a future meeting is to consider a resolution of support for this project. Doesn't obligate the city financially. It just says we're in favor of this project if it's awarded the tax credits. And applications are due on March the 1st. We filed the pre-apps last week, so that's one thing that Texas does nice. They let you file a pre-application. Everybody gets to self-score, and so once those are funded, you kind of see where you stack out in the list. And then the full applications, which include building plans, market studies, engineering reports, environmental studies, are due March the 1st. And the resolution has to go in with that full application.
Sir, speaking of scoring, since there's already affordable housing development on Goodwin and 306, is there a concern that you may not be as competitive because it's of its close proximity to another?
No, and if I am correct, isn't that a family?
Yes.
Yeah. So being a senior, we're kind of in a different category.
Okay.
So.
Is that a separate allotment of tax credit money?
It's not. We're still competing for the same ones, but in the scoring criteria, they don't penalize either a family deal for competing with a senior or senior deal that's next to a family.
What's the total allotment on the board, and what are you going for?
I think this year Texas will probably have somewhere close to $70 million in tax credits.
But isn't it a regional situation?
Yeah, and they divide it into 16 regions, and then they divide those 16 regions into urban and rural, and then divvy up the funds that way. We will probably be requesting about $1.5 million in tax credits for this, and I think that's probably pretty close to the maximum amount that will be in the urban. New Braunfels is considered an urban district in Region 9. We'll find out if we're successful at the July board meeting, and then we'll have a pretty good idea before then, but that's when the credits are officially awarded. And then if we're successful, we usually try to start construction in that next 6-month period, so it'll probably be shortly after the first of the year. That's another nice thing about coming to Texas. You can almost build year-round down here. Do I have any other questions?
Any questions?
I'm excited to see y'all coming up and applying. When you do come and ask for the resolution, I'll have to recuse myself because I'm a realtor and I help people do this.
Okay.
But I want you to know that if I could be there for the vote, you'd have my full support, because it's exciting to see more of these programs coming through and into town and scoring high enough to actually get built, because we
Yes.
definitely have a need for it. And
One,
so,
one thing that I'm going to say TDEC was forced to do this year was, it used to be that a senior project came out of the gates 2 points behind a family deal. That's just the way they figured the scoring or established the scoring. Well, one of the legislators, and I can't remember his name, didn't think that was right. He thought seniors ought to at least be on an equal footing. So this year, he mandated that the scoring be equal, so that if two are side by side, they're gonna have equal chance at it. The senior isn't gonna be two behind. So we probably 90% of what we develop is senior housing. So we were really glad that change was made. So
I'm sorry, real quick. I just have a question about the location as far as, is there, I'm not really familiar with the base zoning is, but is there going to be anything necessary for you to come back here and ask for any zoning change?
no, it's our understanding that the current zoning allows what we want to build.
Thank you.
Is that correct? Or close? Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions of council? Okay, well, this is a presentation, so with all presentations, we'll open it up to anyone wishing to address it. If you want to address this item, if you could please step up to the podium, state your name and address. Please limit to 5 minutes or less. Okay, with that, let's move on to minutes. Discuss and consider approval of the minutes of the special and regular meetings of December 14th and the special meeting of December 7th, 2015. Hear your motion.
Move for approval. Second.
I have a motion, a second. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by stating aye.
aye.
Those opposed, please signify by stating nay. And the motion passes. Item 2, citizens' communication. This is a time for citizens to address City Council on issues and items of concern not on this agenda. There'll be no City Council action at this time. Please understand, for us to address something that would not be on this agenda could be a violation of the Open Meetings Act. But this is your opportunity to address council. So if you'd like to step up to the podium, state your name and address, please limit to 5 minutes or less. Okay, with that, I'll move on to consent agenda. Consent agenda. All items listed below are considered to be routine and non-controversial by the City Council and will be approved by one motion. There'll be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or citizen so requests, in which case the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered as part of the normal order of business. Item A, approval of the reappointment of one individual to the Arts Commission for a term ending January 31st, 2019. Item B, approval of the appointment of two individuals to the Heritage Commission for terms ending March 11th, 2019. Item C, approval of the appointment of three individuals to the New Braunfels Housing Authority Board of Commissioners for terms ending January 22nd, 2018. Item D, approval of the appointment of one individual to the Animal Services Advisory Board for a term ending November 1st, 2016. Item E, approval of the appointment of one individual as an alternate to the Building Standards Commission for a term ending October 26, 2016. Item F, approval of the appointment of one individual to Land Park Golf Course Advisory Board for a term ending December 31st, 2018. Item G, approval of a purchase from Dell desktops and laptops through a State of Texas Department of Information Resource contract. Item H, approval of a budget amendment in the fiscal year 2015-16 grant fund and 2013 bond program fund. Item I, approval of a resolution and ratification of a grant application submission to the Alamo Area Council of Governments Regional Solid Waste Grants Program in the amount of $1,600 and $20,000, and authorizing the city manager to accept funds and execute all contract documents associated with the grant if awarded. Item J, approval of purchases of vehicles from Silsby Ford, Grapevine Dodge Chrysler Jeep, and Griffin Ford Seguin. Item K, approval to renew a lease with Sidell Properties for the Fire Department Training Division facility at 1311A Industrial Drive. Item L, approval of the second and final reading of an ordinance amending Section 126-346, subsection F, subsection 1, Section 126-368, subsection A, Section 126-368, subsection B, and Sections 126-368, subsection D of the Code of Ordinances to revise parking restrictions on West Lincoln Street with the middle of the bridge at the Comal River to South Union Avenue. I have a second and final reading.
I need a motion. Second.
Do I hear a motion?
Move for approval.
Second?
I have a second. Okay, and this is the second and final reading. Mr. Ayton, will you please call a roll?
Certainly. Councilmember Green.
Aye.
Councilmember Edwards.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Reeves.
Aye.
Councilmember Monsiváis.
Aye.
Councilmember Peters.
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia.
Aye.
Mayor Castillo.
Aye, and the motion passes unanimously. Item A, discuss and consider approval of a master plan for an all-abilities park for the purposes of fundraising and guidance of future park development. Mrs. Dickey.
Good evening again. So I do have a presentation for you tonight regarding the All Abilities Park Master Plan. There we go. So what is an All Abilities Park, first of all? We have talked about this before, but just as a refresher, an All Abilities Park is all-inclusive. It is not intended solely for use by people with disabilities. It is shared parkland, and it is beneficial as a neighborhood park for typical park patrons who will use it as a destination park for those with all abilities. However, it is a one-of-a-kind destination for a section of the population who are otherwise bound to strict home, school, and work regimes. The park will serve toddlers, children, teen, young adults, and seniors of New Braunfels and surrounding communities. And having an all-abilities park of this nature will provide citizens affected by disabilities with a much-needed recreational opportunity that is otherwise non-existent in our community today. We did work on a master planning process over this past summer. You see the list of all the information and site visits that we went through. City staff worked with volunteers from the Callan Hughes Foundation, the New Braunfels Parks Foundation, and Luck Design Team to gather public input on the development of the master plan for the All Abilities Park. In December of 2014, this council did take action to reserve 4 acres of land off of FM 1044, just I'm going to say north, I might be right, on of County Line Road for future use for the All Abilities Park. This survey shows the property boundaries adjacent to the Real Life Church, 1044, and the other properties. Our first public meeting was held on July 9th of 2015. The meeting was well attended by parents, teachers, therapists, and others who were interested in the development of the park. Ideas on what would make the park great were generated as a starting point for the design. What we quickly realized was, from comments at our first meeting, was that many who wanted to give input on the design were not able to actually attend the public input meeting for a variety of reasons, mainly because of childcare issues. And so we quickly developed an online survey and had quickly response, over 157 responses. I did include that in your packet. I hope you took maybe a couple minutes to look through it. I felt like it really told the story of the importance of the park from these families who have very different type of experiences from others when they try to recreate in a traditional setting. We were very pleased with the response. It did echo the same priorities, many of the same priorities from our public input meeting. They did recommend Morgan's Wonderland as a great example of an all-abilities park, and they also cited the City of Round Rock Play for All Park as another good example of an all-abilities park. So the input that we received, both online and at the public input meeting, fell in line with each other, with some of the high priority items being traditional park amenities that you would find in other parks, and then some very specific items due to the nature of the audience involved in this particular park. For instance, the need for specialized surfacing and pathways, the need for air-conditioned restrooms to be able to handle young adult children on changing tables or to act as a cooling zone for certain conditions. Other requests had to do with stimulating senses related to conditions such as colors, lights, and touch. Overall, the participants emphasized that they wanted the park to be open and appealing to all abilities, the able and the disabled. They stressed that the park would be a place for families to recreate, play, and grow together. So what we learned from all of our input, both at the public meetings and the online survey, included several things, mainly that the experience in using a park is very different than a typical family and often limited due to complications that accompany a child with special needs. I have to say I learned quite a bit. Not only means that families that have special needs children don't get that the special needs child doesn't get to experience the outdoors and play in a traditional setting, but often the siblings of that child don't get taken to the park because it's too cumbersome. The special need child often doesn't last long enough. The setting, it overstimulates them, or they get overheated and they maybe 10 minutes in the park and then the family has to pack up and go home. Therefore, the other children are often taken home too. And so it's a difficult experience to take the whole family out to recreate together. It was very eye-opening. So some of the things that we learned were time is of the essence. They need specialized equipment for sensory needs. There's less understanding by others in a traditional park setting. They often feel called out or looked upon differently. Wandering off is a very big concern. A lot of the children have a tendency to dart away, and it's very stressful for the parents who are watching the children. They have to be on guard all the time, watching where their children are going. Overheating and shade, as we know just from regular families, is very important, but particularly as children with conditions that overheat very easily. When you're in a wheelchair or have special equipment, you overheat even faster than normal. Even though all of our playgrounds do meet ADA accessibility requirements, it doesn't mean that it's accessible to everybody all of the time. It just depends on what each child is willing to experience and willing to try. So different types of equipment for different types of children would be recommended. And then special considerations for the size of the child, because children come in all shapes and sizes, particularly in the restrooms, where you're probably familiar with changing tables for babies, but they come in all sizes, so that older children will need to be changed as well, and so that's a special consideration. And more than anything, they just want to be included in the community. So this is our preliminary master plan that was presented at our second public input meeting on July 23rd. The park was designed in 3 components: the playground area, a miniature city, and a ball field area. The concept includes many details that will appeal to a variety of ages, abilities, and tastes. And just to walk you through some of the special features of the park, in this section, you see elements that appeal to the senses, such as touch and movement. Some of the elements include a waterworks-style tank with pipes and a raised sand bed and a rainbow of light tunnel. There's substantial shade throughout the park, including this section. And the pictures at the bottom are either elements that came from Morgan's Wonderland or the Round Rock Park, or their inspiration. So, for instance, this picture in the middle is not necessarily something that we would build, but it's an inspiration for a rainbow, a tunnel, a rainbow of light that would be similar within our park. This next section is located just off the parking lot and is where the playgrounds are located. There's 2 units proposed, which is typical for playgrounds. 1 unit is for ages 2 to 5, and 1 unit is for ages 5 to 12. The restrooms are also in this section. Input was very strong on the restrooms, to include family-style restrooms so that more than one child could go inside at a time, and that they are air-conditioned. Serving two purposes again. One, the ease of changing clothes. Think wet bathing suits and sweaty kids. And then it also allows the restrooms to be used as a cooling area for guests who are prone to overheating. This third section is an extension of the playground section, including swings, slides, and climbing mounds. Just an example of the equipment, the slides have a variety of tactical rollers. One has a tactical roller on it, and the other slide being a standard sliding surface, just to give a different experience for the children. This offers a variety to young people who need to be stimulated in different ways due to their conditions. And again, ample shade and seating in this area as well. And then I wanted to point out some of the special design aspects within the park, including gating, shade, and sidewalks. All of the gates are double gated. This was suggested by a parent that will allow for safe entry into the park without worry of other children darting out on accident. The park is entirely fenced, allowing parents not to have to worry about children running off or being flight risk into the street or the parking lots. It's a safety feature for the children and, again, ease of use for the parents using the park. When asking the parents what features they would like to see, I particularly remember one parent asking that they wanted a direct route to the front of the park and not to have to take the long way around on the handicap accessible route. And as you can see, there are plenty of wide accessible sidewalks throughout our park to navigate through. And of course, again, plenty of shade and landscaping, which will be so important for this park in particular, whose guests will be dealing with a variety of medical conditions and cannot tolerate the extreme heat or direct sunlight. And this section of the park is called the Miniature City, and it's meant to represent our own city of New Braunfels on a smaller scale. Guests can become familiar with the workings of a community in this safe, comfortable setting. They can learn such things as how to safely cross the street, how to ride a bike on the road, and what different businesses are about, and much more. We're anticipating that many sponsorships and partnership opportunities are available in this section, as local businesses will have a chance to place their names on the storefronts and become a partner with the park. So again, this master plan was shown at our second public meeting, and the reaction was they loved it. It was overwhelmingly positive. However, they did make a couple of suggestions to tweak the design even further, including adding a restroom to the concession building so that if you were having an activity at the ball field area, you would not have to cross the entire park to get to the restroom. Adding shade at the dugouts, and to make the ball field a multi-use field instead of just a ball field like a baseball style field, so that other soccer or other types of sports could be played on the field. Which results in this final master plan that we have presented for you tonight. All those changes were incorporated into the design. And I do want to mention the cooperation at this point of the Real Life Church throughout this entire process. They made their building available to us for all of our public input meetings. And they've actually talked to us about the opportunity of, in the future, partnering with a local use agreement of extending parking onto their property if needed. And that is represented right here on the drawing. So if the time comes that additional parking is needed, they are open to talking with us about that possibility. So, the construction estimate for the total project is just under $4 million. We have broken it into 3 sections or 3 phases. We are assuming that the playground phase would be phase 1 at $2.8 million. This, obviously, the most expensive phase does include all of our site work, our impact fees, the parking, utilities, since we're starting with a piece of ground that doesn't have anything on it yet, that's where most of the expense comes from. Now, these phases can be built in any order. So if we had, for instance, a donor that said, I want to fund the miracle field or the ball field, and I'm ready to do it right now, we can certainly move all of those expenses into the ball field or the mini city, you know, they can be moved around in any way. It's just that that's where they are living now. So we can build them in any order that we want. It does include a 20% contingency. It does not assume cost escalation, and we will continue to escalate those costs as the fundraising continues to move forward. It is an expensive park, and want to make sure you know that we do recognize that, and the volunteers recognize that. In fact, we sat down with the board of the Callan Hughes Foundation and went over these cost estimates with them and made sure that they understood what the costs were, what the phases were, and what they were getting into, if you will, of what they said that they were willing to fundraise for. And they were not undeterred at all. And so it's not something that we know is going to come quickly. In our experience with the Parks Foundation, raising money for the skate park and the dog park, it's a multi-year process. And they have talked with the groups that have done the fundraising for the other park projects, and they know that slow and steady wins the race, and they are willing to do it, and their hearts are in it. And I'm sure that from the time that you've spoken to them before and what you'll probably hear from tonight, you'll feel the same way. So, excuse me, our next steps include, the master plan has been approved by the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board on November 17th. The Parks Foundation and the Callan Hughes Foundation have both approved the master plan. And again, just to reiterate, the volunteers are looking for the city council to approve the master plan so that they can seek grants and donations for the construction of the park. So far, $24,000 has been raised towards the construction of the park, which it's a start. But that's before there was actually a master plan in place. So I think it's a good start for them. So I'm happy to answer any questions or take any comments at this time.
Stacy, I appreciate the information and the presentation, very good. 3 questions though. You did most of your input during the month of July, and so I'm not sure what opportunity the school districts, because I know they're going to use this, and/or the Senior Citizen Center had as far as input with this All Abilities Park. I don't know if you got any, but I would say to you that it would, I think, behoove you to check base with each of the school districts and the senior citizens, because to make sure that you've cross-checked their particular needs with what you're hearing from the group. That's the first deal.
Okay.
So I guess that really wasn't a question, a statement.
If I could, I will just mention that we had several teachers involved in our public input meeting. And so I feel like we got, in fact, a great deal of our specific input and needs as it related to sensory and touch and movement and light and things really came
Sounds
from
like
those
you're,
teachers.
pretty close with that. I do have a question about the 20% contingency. That seems to be pretty high for a piece of, for building on a piece of property that I don't think is a major problem as far as, having to remove a lot of things. It's pretty flat. It's pretty. I don't know of any other things, but why 20% as opposed to 10%?
Well, I might let Brian answer that question.
So I guess my answer on this specific in all projects would be, at this early stage of design, you see some of the elements in the master plan, but how they actually work, what type of materials and the designs that will be incorporated aren't specified enough for us to hone in on that cost. Obviously, the escalation will affect things as we go forward, but it's really just that we're not far enough along in the design to cut down those contingencies.
Well, since it's a fundraising effort, wherever they can save, I understand your point, but wherever they can save it certainly would be helpful. Thank you. I'm not familiar with the Callan Hughes Foundation. Are they recognized with the IRS and the tax federal number and everything?
Yes, sir, they are, a 501c3. And that's Lauren Clausen, who you heard from before, and she is in the audience tonight, so.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's not surprising to hear that she was not deterred by the 3.9. Based on the prior conversations, bring it.
Stacy, I know it's apples and oranges, but how does this $4 million or $3.9 million compared to what we've finally wound up with is the cost at Morningside?
It's significantly higher. So Morningside Park is a 16-acre park, and our final construction cost for our phase 1 that we're doing right now is just over $1 million. Of course, we're not developing all 16 acres, right now. And these 4 acres that you see is pretty compact.
Yeah.
We're squeezing a lot into it.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
it's apples and oranges at this point. Good way to describe it.
I think it's nice and certainly it's ambitious, but it's worth it. So best of luck to the foundation. Certainly we're here to help.
Any other questions? Okay, anyone wishing to address this item, if you'll please step up to the podium, state your name and address, please limit to 5 minutes or less. Okay, with that, do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Motion a second, but I see somebody coming up. Did I hear a second? Okay. Who was the second?
Hello. You said name and
Leah.
address?
Please.
Melissa White, 304 North Gunther. I am a teacher here in New Braunfels. I'm also a Special Olympics coach. I volunteer at Newcomb Ranch for tennis with kids with disabilities. I'm also a sister of a woman with Down syndrome. So this park is very important to me personally. I do not speak on behalf of my school or my school district. What I'm concerned with is opportunities for people with disabilities. And so when I think about that, I think about socially, I think about physically, and I know that a lot of our kids do not have the opportunity to play sports. They don't have a place to go and be safe and socialize, and a park like this is what they need. So there's lots of sports for other kids, but kids like that we work with every day, there's not a lot of opportunity. So anytime I see an opportunity for kids with special needs, I think we should do it. Comal is what, the 9th fastest county in the whole country, growing, and we're gonna have more and more people with disabilities moving in. If any of you guys were here in June, you saw hundreds of people coming through this downtown area supporting our kids. And it wasn't just kids with disabilities, it was family, it was friends, it was neighbors, it was people in the city. And that is just a small percentage of the people that it affects in this town. So I would really encourage you to get behind this park. I will tell you, I've taken students to Landa Park, and Landa Park is amazing. But there are some pieces of equipment where it takes 2 people to hold 1 kid on, because that kid can't walk and he can't sit up on his own. And that's just, it's not okay. I mean, it's great. I think Landa Park's beautiful, but I feel like we could do better for our kids. So I hope that we can get behind this, because I really want this to be a destination. I would like for this to be a place that I could take my kids on a field trip, I tried Landa Park, and it wasn't something that could work for taking a large group, because when you think you have 2 kids to hold 1 kid in place on 1 seesaw, then you've got like 10 other kids that you can't watch, and then it's not fenced in. So it's a real problem. And even Morgan's Wonderland, it's wonderful. I've taken my kids there many years, but you have to think the only one that gets in for free is that kid with a disability. When you try to take family members or more kids, there's a charge for all of that. So you really can't take a large group of people to Morgan's Wonderland. It's really not, it's not something that's open to the public in the sense that you can take a large group and really have a social outing. It really becomes, it becomes hard for you to have like a real big social group. So I just want to, I hope that you guys can get behind this park, because I really want this to happen for New Braunfels. I love the city. I've been here 6 years. There's so many amazing things. I get why people are moving here, but I think this could be something that we could really be proud of.
Thank you. Thank you.
My son wanted to say something. He lives at 1528 Capridge Peak.
You got this.
You're okay.
You're okay. What did you want to tell him? If you're going to be nervous, we're going to go sit back down.
Do you like the park?
What's your name?
Caleb.
Do you
Hi,
like the
Caleb.
park?
Yes.
What do you like about it?
It has kids with disabilities.
Yeah. What else? Why do you think it's a good park?
All the kids can play there
Yeah.
with no disabilities.
Mm-hmm. Is that all you wanted to say?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Good job.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Abby Isbell. I live at 2373 Medina Drive. I've lived here in New Braunfels for 8 years, and it's one of the greatest communities I've ever been a part of. I've lived in a lot of different places. One of the greatest things about this town, I think, is that it values all of its members. And you could even see that with the Martin Luther King, the proclamations that were made, and the idea of every voice being heard and everybody is important here. And I think this park goes right along with saying the same things that we said at the very beginning of this meeting. Callan's Castle All Abilities Park has an ability to take our community, I think, to the next level. We have an opportunity to lead the way and provide for families and individuals who are often marginalized in our society. 1 year ago, in December, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. It's a disease that affects and attacks my own body. My immune system doesn't work, and there are various days where my mobility changes with the weather, with heat. Those are things that affect me. I personally don't have some of the major concerns and disabilities, although I hate that term because it says in the word, you're not able. I prefer the word adaptation. I need adaptations at times. These children need adaptations at times. It doesn't mean they can't do things. It just means they need to do things differently. And I think this park speaks and serves those types of families. After my diagnosis, I began to see that our society doesn't really meet the needs of people with disability. I think living with a disease, it caused me to see a variety of issues that I face day to day, but I'm thankful that for me, I can push through many of those, but a lot of these families, a lot of these adults and children can't. And so they need help with the simplest of daily tasks. And often because of that, sports and play are not something that they get to participate in. Callan's Castle is going to provide children and individuals of all abilities to a place to play. They can play with their parents, their siblings, their friends. They can have accessible bathrooms, changing tables, playground equipment, and much more. Put yourself in the position of the parents who want to take their children to a park where they can play. If it was our children, if it was my child, I'm glad I'm the one that has to deal with the issues that I have. But you look at children that have those issues and you look at their parents and you think, if it was my child, I would do everything I could to provide a place for them to play, a safe place for them to play. And I'd do whatever it took to raise the funds for that to happen. And I think this is something that gives you guys the ability to get behind it, step on board, and support something that not only is going to provide sport and play, but it's also going to enrich the lives and the social ability and the self-confidence of children that oftentimes, like I said before, are marginalized in our society. So here, you have the opportunity to lead the way in New Braunfels and in the San Antonio area and say that play really is for all. So I would just encourage you to support and get behind and encourage all of the elements of this park. And thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, Jade. How are you?
Good.
Good.
I'm good.
Awesome. What are you going to tell us?
Can you build a park for us?
I think so.
That's how you say.
Hi, my name is Todd Hanley. Address is 177 Green Valley. And I grew up here. went away for a couple of years to go to college and came back. My daughter got diagnosed with autism 5 years ago, so that's basically when me and my wife's whole life changed. The park thing is definitely a big issue. We noticed how a lot of things definitely changed, especially for her. She's a runner, so that's a big concern. She's almost had a major accident because of that unexpected running. So a park that has definitely a fenced-in area would definitely help us, especially for a situation like that. I also work here at Best Buy. I've been here for 5 years working at Best Buy, and it's amazing how in the last 5 years I have talked to numerous people that have lived in this community or have moved into this community recently, and they either have a family member or a friend that they know that has special needs. So as every other people that have already come up here and said, the community is growing exponentially, and there are more and more that I've noticed just talking to people that come into Best Buy that do have special needs, family members or friends. So this park definitely would be something that would benefit the community as well as this town. So I do encourage y'all guys, please, to help us in any way that we can to make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
I heard a motion in favor. Did I hear a second?
Yeah,
A second?
he did.
All right, we have a motion and a second.
Hello, ladies and gents. My name is Melissa Durham. These are my children, Austin Durham and Addie Durham. And we moved to New Braunfels about a year ago. And the parks here are great. Landa Park is one of our favorite places to go, but it's kind of hard with him and her. There's not much for Austin to do other than hang out in one swing that's there. And Addie has lots of fun, but she's a little bit more mobile and can do a lot more than what Austin can. Be nice to go to a place that's easy accessible to get his wheelchair through sidewalks and whatnot. Bathrooms would be great versus right now when I have to change Austin, we use the back of our vehicle or other people. Austin's not very big yet, but he's getting bigger, and people have to take blankets and put down in bathrooms to be able to change bigger kids. So definitely an air-conditioned bathroom would be awesome. We moved from Central Illinois, and we're very avid baseball fans, and to be able to have a baseball diamond where Austin could be on a Little League team would be awesome. That would be very cool to do, because that's not something that we have very many options to do right now. Geez, what an amazing proposal. That place is like Disneyland. To be able to go once a week would be great, where both my kiddos could enjoy playing at the park, and we could also meet with other families with similar disabilities and just meet new friends and new faces for both of our children. Please think really hard about backing this proposal, for sure. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion of council? Okay. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Who would be opposed, right? So it's unanimous. And of course, a big thank you to those who have been involved over the last year and a half in moving this towards fruition. So thank you very much. Okay, so moving on. Item B, discuss and consider possible direction to staff regarding the development of a river properties master plan.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. I just asked for this to be discussed, really to kind of to talk about the development of the river properties master plan, and a little bit of a background. Since the early 2000s, we have acquired, I guess, about a little close to 45 lots, which total approximately about 24 acres, through FEMA's Hazard Mitigation Assistance Grant Program, really as a way to protect our first responders by reducing the need for rescue and evacuation efforts in the floodway, and to move our residents out of harm's way by offering an alternative to selling their properties and repeating the cycle. I'll just wait for people to.
Let's go ahead.
The properties are located in Quadrant 1 of the Parkland Development Fee Structure. And if you look at past years' budgets, years 13-14, 14-15, and then this current year, each have identified the development of a master plan as an unmet need. And that's why, it's really time now to kind of pick up that ball and get it rolling again, as we have an obligation to determine the best use for the public land, making efforts to possibly reduce the impervious cover that currently exists in the area, to possibly improve the water quality from the runoff. And due to river access around the Common Street Bridge, it's really created a parking problem in the surrounding neighborhood that's really kind of plagued that neighborhood, I guess, since it was gifted to the city in the early, I think, 1980s. And it should be known that this master plan wouldn't include a recommendation for something that's a typical neighborhood park, such as playground equipment, as we are restricted in the use of the properties that we have required through the grant program, and that we have to keep it open space, and the purposes need to be compatible with recreational or water or wetland management, and that no new structure shall be erected on the premises. And it's really my hope, and then I feel the hope of council, that we continue that grant program regardless of whether or not we have a master plan in place. And so I want to have council really hopefully direct our city manager to, or his representative, to go to the Parks Board and seek a formal recommendation for the development of a master plan for our river properties. And Patrick, can you put that map for me? To kind of give people an idea of where we're talking about. So that we can come up with a scope, and the staff can bring back a formal proposal for council approval. So that's really all I'm looking for at this point. And this is the first slide that shows the area around Common Street Bridge, and then there's other 3 parcels, I think, Sleepy Hollow, Green area, but these are the properties that we kind of have the most ownership of.
You have some more over on the other side of this park right here also.
Sure. Yep.
What do the colors indicate?
Those are just, the blue is city-owned. The rainbow or multicolor one is our conservation easement. And then the green is neighborhood association, neighborhood parks. Or from the HOA parks, I'm sorry. So I don't know if I need a formal motion for their discussion, or if we're okay with just giving staff that direction.
I think in the past, we've just, if it's agreeable with other council members, we've just given staff direction to move ahead and come back to us, then that's where a formal vote would take place. Let me ask you, Chris, the white sections there next to the blue and down by the rainbow and everything, are those properties with existing structures, or possibly also just lots that are owned by individuals?
Some of them are open lots, like owned by individuals, like the one that we recently heard a proposal for. But say the one to the left of the rainbow colored one is currently occupied, but they were actually, when we had the flood event just this past fall, when I went to the shelter, those people who lived there came up there, and they were already at their age where they were just wanting to need to go into a retirement home, but So they were interested in the properties or in the grant program. And then the one over to across the street from there, that's kind of the lone wolf there. That one and the one on the other side of it, there's actually, I'm sorry, there's three lots right there. I don't have a way of pointing them out right now, but there's 3 lots that were interested in the grant program and that we actually had approved the city to seek grant funding, but we weren't awarded the grant, unfortunately. But I know that they're still interested in seeking that funding. So, but other than that, there's several empty lots already that you can't really tell where ownership begins or where it ends.
So is your proposal to have a master plan that runs anywhere along the Guadalupe within the city limits, or just in Sleepy Hollow or over here by Common?
Just the lots that we own, and that it kind of gives us, and maybe Stacy can kind of talk a little bit about it too, but gives us a guidance as far as, because I mean, we're not going to have little pocket parks here and there with the 1 lots that we have, and there's no way that I don't see us making purchases all along the river for access, but it at least gives us guidance as what we can do with those properties. And the overall lots that we have right now, with the master plan, it'll take input from the public and allow us what we can do with that. We already know kind of what our limitations are, but gathering input in what the public wants in that area. But I don't know if Stacey has any.
My recommendation would be to talk to a consultant about the best use of the property. We know that we have some issues that are taking place around the area right now with traffic and parking on the street. There's difficulty in getting down the street for the residents now on a busy summer day. So we need to address some issues with transportation and parking. And then what's the best use of those properties, and how could we make that work better for that section of town? How do we want to maintain the properties? What uses would we allow on the properties? What would we not? So all of that can be encapsulated into a master planning process. Definitely, as Chris had mentioned, and as we do with all of our planning processes, input from the neighborhood and the community of what they would like to see.
Yeah, I was just trying to get an idea of the scope of the size of the area that you wanted to look at, because that certainly affects cost with any consultant.
Right.
So.
Yes, and we could look at different scope variations. For instance, we could look at this scope to start with. I mean, we do own some properties in the Sleepy Hollow area. We have another map. Do you have it? But very few. And so, you know, the scope would be very different over here, where we might just want to make some policy decisions or some statements about, you know, how this property is going to be managed into the future. Because of only 3 properties, it's going to be a very different situation than what we have over on the Fairlane River Acres area.
Look through. Thanks for bringing it in front of council.
So we're okay with the direction to staff?
I am.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anyone wishing to address this item, if you'll please step up to the podium, state your name and address, please limit to 5 minutes or less. Okay, with that, we'll move on. Item C, discuss and consider approval of an ordinance amending sections 86-119 and 138-170 subsection I of the Code of Ordinances by increasing the river management fee from $1.50 to $2 and the appropriate budget amendment.
Mayor and members of the City Council, before I get started on the presentation, I want to make a introduction. We have our new river manager here in the audience, Amy Brimmer, and I'm going to ask her to stand and recognize her. We were lucky enough to find Amy in the organization already. So she worked in our watershed division, came in and interviewed, sort of blew us away. So we're happy to have her on board. And this year will be her training year as she gets used to river operations and learns everything from the crew that's already experts at it. So we're really looking forward to having her with us this year. And so the presentation tonight is a continuation of what we talked about on December 14th, regarding a redistribution, I guess, of the river management fee. This is a recommendation that comes to you from the River Advisory Committee, and we have two tonight. We'll start with the river management fee and the first reading of the ordinance. I'm going to do just a brief presentation of what I've already given you so the audience has some information on what we're talking about. The river management fee, just an overview. We are basically realigning the fee as it stands now. It will now apply only to non-residents. We will apply the fee to any non-residents who come through outfitters or through the private tubers, excuse me, those private tubers who come in through Prince Psalms or through Himman Island. The fee will be increased from $1.50 to $2, and we will only collect it on the weekends and on holidays through the tubing season, which we say is Memorial Weekend to Labor Day. So just that season on the weekends and the holidays. And we're going to modify the current wristband system that's already been successfully implemented, and we will modify that system to notice residents and non-residents, those who pay and those who don't. One of the goals of the River Advisory Committee was to make the river fund sustainable, cost neutral, and so let's look at the revenue projections in coming up with this recommendation. If we look at the seasonal private tubers, again, those are those coming through Prince Psalms and Himman Island. We anticipate 107,000 of those will be non-residents. At $2 per tube, that will estimate an approximate $214,000. Again, that's new revenue to the fund for non-residents that we have not previously charged. If we look at the outfitter tubers, again, through the season, we estimate about 245,000 non-residents come through the outfitters. Again, at $2 per tube, that's an estimated collection of $489,000. That compares to what we collected in 2015 of about $480,000. So we're collecting the same amount even though we're redistributing the fee, realigning the fee. There will be expenses involved, of course, in implementing this new system. We'll need some additional hours for cashiers, a coordinator, and park rangers. Again, those will be seasonal hours. Regular, just general supplies, some one-time costs involved with computers, which serve as our point of sale or cash registers in collecting the fees. And then the fee booths, we're anticipating, we say 4 here, I anticipate it will actually be 3. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. Those are both one-time costs for a year one expense of $168,000, but of course, recurring is only $62,000. And what's not included here, you know, of course, when we implement something new, we have an impact on our current staff, so there's some indirect costs here that are not included, but staff that has to take phone calls, staff that has to make the season passes that we're going to talk about. So just so you'll know, there's some other impacts that are just not included here. And to look at both revenue and expenses, try to put this in one chart so that it makes sense, give a comprehensive view. But we anticipate in the first year collecting $703,000, both through the outfitters and collecting on private tubers. In year one, anticipating the $168,000 in estimated expenses, we see that the increase over the 2015 fee revenue of $488,000 will be $46,000. So in year one, we'll generate $46,000 in new revenue. However, recurring after year one, we anticipate will be have a net revenue increase of $152,000. So $152,000 in new revenue as we realign this fee. Implementing the collection part of it, as we talked about at the last meeting, we'll have to close off Himman Island. Drive. And so what we'll do is put those fee booths at each end of Hinman Island Drive to capture those people coming in that direction. We'll also put a booth in what we anticipate is a double wide, for lack of a better term, but it'll have ability to take 2 lines instead of just the 1 line, 2 lines at the gateway access. And again, there's an example of the type of fee booth. This isn't the exact picture. We're still doing research on which one specifically, but that is an example of one of the fee booths. What you see there is that it has to be on a trailer because as we close off Hinman Island Drive, we'll need to be pulling those trailers and those fee booths in and out every night and placing them there the next morning. So the trailer is an important part of it. One of the other recommendations from the River Advisory Committee as well is to implement a resident pass system. This will be a season pass, good for 1 year, that must be obtained in advance at the Parks Office or the Land and Recreation Center, and this will allow residents to avoid paying the $2 fee. It must be shown at the gate or at the outfitter to avoid the river management fee. We are exploring ways to make available the resident passes or the ability to obtain a resident pass at the gateway. We've thought quite a bit about this and still working on it. Frankly, we are a little bit technologically challenged at that location. We're looking at wireless options, looking at everything that we can think of to make that available, but it is a challenging situation. But we'll continue to work on, and I know the park staff is sort of thinking outside the box on some options, but that is an issue that we're continuing to work on. This is a slide you saw the last time, just to bring it to your attention again, some of the issues that we need to be aware of. Garden Street Bridge and Hinman Island leakage, those who get past and don't have a wristband, those who try to get in at Garden Street Bridge. It'll be incumbent on us, on the police department and the rangers to monitor that and to monitor those getting out at the last Hoover's exit to make sure that people have wristbands. One of the other issues is people who live along the river or who rent homes or condos along the river and enter through that private property. We don't have a way to issue those people wristbands, and so again, that will be something we'll have to monitor.
Christy, can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
I assume that means private entry and public exit. If they get in and out on private property, there's no wristband requirement.
Correct.
Is that correct?
That's correct. Mm-hmm. We anticipate the first year especially, we'll just have to work through the customer service concerns. It will be a challenging, no doubt, as we manage the long lines for entry. How do we deal with residents who don't have a pass? We're still working on the details of that. As I said, making those passes available at the entrance would be the ultimate way to solve that, but we're still working on that. And then there's just that category of what have we not thought of, right? It's always those unintended consequences. And again, just like we do every year as river operations go, we monitor and we adjust. And we'll continue to do that. And as we get through one season, we'll have lessons learned, and we'll apply those to as we go along.
So I was going to ask a question about the season passes, and I think I answered it in my own head anyway. But is the reason why they can't just show their driver's license partially because if they're underage, they don't necessarily have government ID, and if they're New Braunfels but not city limits?
That's the biggest issue, is there are people who have a New Braunfels resident address, but they don't actually live in the city limits. And so what we'll need to do is use our GIS maps. That's the ultimate solution, is to have the capability to look up on our GIS maps at the entrance to be able to verify that they actually live in the city limits.
Gotcha. Well, if you're able to do that at the time of entrance, would they still need to have a season pass if you're able to
We can
just
issue
look
it
them up?
there. We can issue the pass there.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
What happens, for instance, at the pool? Because I believe there's season passes for the pool, are there not?
Yes.
And what happens if they show up at the pool without one?
At the pool, we have a different point of sale system, so we have all your account information, so we can actually pull your account up by your name, and we can look to see if you have a season pass or not. But if you do lose your season pass, we can issue another one for $5 at the pool.
So you have the capability at the pool to access data
We do.
that we currently would not have at Prince Song?
That's correct.
Thank you.
So this one, this slide is just an overview, and it's incorporating two of the proposals tonight, and I realize we're getting to parking fees next, but just to give you an overview on new revenue, if these are implemented on second reading at your next meeting, again, we'll have $152,000 in new revenue for river management fees. If you implement parking fees, and I realize that's a second item tonight, total estimated new revenue is $345,000, and compare that to our river fund deficit in 2015 of $330,000. So we are making up that deficit and on the road to making the river management fund sustainable. And that's my quick overview, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Christy, could you clarify for those listening and those here? I think some of us know the answer to the question, but relative to, I'll call it buy-in of this proposal on the part of commercial interests and so on and so forth, can you talk about that a little bit in terms of how it was exercised throughout various elements in the city?
I'm not sure I understand the
Well,
question.
let's take outfitters as an
Okay.
example. I think you had representation and you had meetings with outfitters and should have gotten a feel as to whether there's support for this.
Sure.
Same with other parts of the visitor and tourism industry.
Sure. Well, as you know, the River Advisory Committee is made up of representatives from all those agencies, people. We have an outfitter representative on the committee. We have a Schlitterbahn representative on the committee. And what I can tell you is many of the outfitters attended the meetings and participated in the meetings and they were not shy about giving their opinion in the meetings, of course. And that was welcome input, of course. And I think the River Advisory Committee did a really good job of balancing all the interests. And I guess the biggest sign of that is this recommendation comes to you from the River Advisory Committee on a unanimous vote.
Christy, first off, thank you for the presentation. I'm all for revenue neutral. But it's going to take several years to get there, really, because of your implementation fees of what you outlined. I still think that you're leaving some money on the table by not including Fridays. But, you know, I go along with this and see how it works out. But I think that you're going to maybe need to take a look at that in the future. I'm still a little hung up on what is the definition of a resident and what age are we talking about that's inclusive with that? And then and the third part of that is, do they get a wristband?
Let's not think of it by age, it's by tube.
Okay.
Okay?
So no matter the age,
Correct.
it's by the tube.
It's by the tube.
Okay, that's okay. So they're issued a special wristband
Correct.
if they have that, if they show that.
Correct.
Okay.
And
So
by
if
the way,
I have
that's
if I have a pass, I just show that and I get a certain wristband.
color of wristband, yes,
Yeah,
sir.
Okay, all right.
And by the way, that's how it's done through the outfitters as well, by tube, is that correct?
Today.
Yeah.
And are you going to, is it foreseen that you're going to set up this season pass situation well prior to the seasoning opening?
I think it's-
That people can knock it out ahead of time like they do at Schlitterbahn and so forth?
I think that's crucial. I think once we know the direction of the council, we need to start working on a marketing plan
And
immediately.
is it a picture ID, the pass?
Yes, it will be. It will be.
I have a question, maybe Stacy will have to answer this, but you're asking for 5 more rangers. I understand that it possibly takes some more personnel, but you've never fully staffed your ranger staff in the past each season, so why are you asking for 5 more?
It's a good question. We anticipate that positions would be needed to stand at each of the additional fee booths to be able to provide customer service and answer questions. We may not get all of those positions filled. We try very hard each season to fill all of our positions, but the nature of the seasonal positions is a lot of turnover. But we will need the bodies on the ground this summer, so we feel like we will need those 5 extra positions to be able to have the personnel out there talking to customers, explaining the situation, answering the questions that they have, providing assistance.
I certainly hope that they're dispersed appropriately. I'm sure that you will, as opposed to gathering together.
Absolutely. And one of what Christy had just mentioned, we will have to provide ADA assistance as customers come up to the booths. And so in order to do that, right now what we're anticipating is they will have to ask a ranger for assistance in order to make that transaction. So that can be done in a variety of ways. It can be done hand to hand. The rangers will assist with that as well.
Thank you.
I don't have a question, just more of a comment that I'm really glad to see, and I think we mentioned this at the last meeting. It's nice to see that the River Activities Committee has come to us with a proposal that the outfitters are happy with, and they feel like they're not being unfairly taxed or feed to death or anything like that, but also make sure that our local taxpayers are getting a benefit that maybe our tourists don't. So kudos to everybody on the committee to come up with something that seems like a really good compromise.
Agreed. We had some people on the committee who really sort of thought outside the box. Obviously, I haven't been involved in any of the past ones, but it wasn't too bad, so.
Yeah. Collaboration is a beautiful thing.
Christy, thank you for your work with the committee. Was there ever a formal recommendation whenever the River Activities Committee and the Parks Board met together, or was that not?
There was not. It was a meeting to discuss.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Okay. Anyone wishing to address this item, if you'll please step up to the podium, state your name and address. Please limit to 5 minutes or less. Okay, with that, do I hear a motion?
Move for approval.
Go ahead.
Move for approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion of council? Okay, with that, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please signify by stating nay. And the motion passes unanimously. Item D. Discuss and consider approval of the first reading of an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, Section 86-7, Operation of Vehicles in Parks, subsection D, subsection 1, to add parking fees in the Elizabeth Street lots at Landon Park and the appropriate budget amendments.
Mayor and members of the City Council, this is the second recommendation coming from the River Advisory Committee. And in my first discussion, I neglected to mention that several of the members of the River Advisory Committee are here tonight in the audience supporting this recommendation. So the second recommendation from the committee is to extend paid parking to what we call the Elizabeth Street lots. This is similar to what we've done at Prince Psalms Park, implementing a $10 parking fee. There are 198 spaces at Elizabeth Street, but we need to reserve Lot 1, as you see, for staff. There are 43 spaces there. We actually need a total of 100 spaces for staff. We'll talk about that in a minute, but we're going to reserve that. We'll use Lot 2 and implement the $10 paid parking using a kiosk, similar to what we do at Prince Psalms. It will be enforced 7 days per week during the tubing season, again, which we say is Memorial Day to Labor Day. Looking at revenue generation from that lot, we estimate the revenue of $193,000. We'll have a one-time expense of $25,000 for the parking kiosk, and so year one net revenue of $168,000. There are challenges with implementation of this recommendation. We all sort of go into this recognizing that there will be challenges. We will need to reserve the Lander Recreation Center for staff parking, the remainder of the staff parking that we'll need, Circle Arts Theater parking, and our mini golf customers. As you know, the mini golf course is right across the street, and they have enjoyed parking in this parking lot to date, and so we'll reserve some spots in the Lander Recreation Center for those customers. We did meet with representatives from Circle Arts Theater this week and are making arrangements to do parking passes with people who attend Circle Arts Theater for their shows. And we're working through those issues with the group from Circle Arts. Again, we'll have some reserved spots at Lander Recreation Center for the mini golf. And it's just, frankly, further challenging, sort of a difficult parking situation as it is. We all know that Landa Park is parking challenged, and so there are definite ramifications to some of this, but we're ready to work through those. Again, like with the river management fee, we will monitor those and adjust as best we can. Again, this is the same slide that you saw previously. Again, with new river management fees, parking fees, if you choose to do this, we'll have a total estimated new revenue to the River Activities Fund of $345,000, which again makes the river fund whole. That was a quick one. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Christy, was there any discussion, generally when you go to a sporting event somewhere, the closer you park to a venue, the more you pay. The further you get away from it, it's a sliding scale. Why was it that they wanted $10 when that same amount is being paid by people that are just right there at the front door in Prince Psalm? Because there's quite a bit of distance between this Elizabeth and where they're going to enter.
No, you're right. And it wasn't, we really just looked at implementing what was already done at Prince Psalms. It wasn't a subject of consideration about a sliding scale.
But you're going with it?
That's the recommendation from the River Advisory Committee, yes, sir.
Okay. And, well, I know we'll hear other challenges in a minute.
Christy?
Well, I got a, sorry.
No, go ahead. Is there concern with, since we're just approved on the first reading, a new policy in charging non-residents, and then back in this past summer, we approved the pilot program and the experiment with the Lost Tubers exit video camera system. Is there a concern that, we're taking a little bit too much on right now and doing a little bit too much all at once? I mean, if you don't feel comfortable answering that's fine. That's just my opinion.
I understand the concern. Yes,
because
sir.
I really want us to get the stuff right that we had approved already before we start exploring other stuff that's really going to bog down and kind of fill our plate a little bit.
Sure.
Kind of like stop and catch our breath a little bit, and then look at something in the future. But that's just it's my opinion. So.
Sure.
I got a call from the gentleman who is the engineer or the conductor.
Mr. Shane Vogel?
Yes, of the mini train. And I'm not sure if he was able to make it
there.
tonight. Oh, good. Excellent. All right, then I'll wait and you can give your concerns. But I just wanted to make sure we voiced that, to kind of tag onto it, that if we start charging here, it's going to be forcing more people looking for free parking to go over where the mini train and the pool and the land house are. And so then that's going to strain that parking even more because you're going to have these other people going that way. And so...
Yeah, and that's one of the concern. Yeah, and that's one of the things we know. Again, is Landa Park is parking challenged, and so you begin to push it out, and we recognize that it may have some impact on some neighborhoods, and we'll have to monitor the neighborhoods as well.
Christy, this council approved a Landa Park master planning, and part of that is parking. Wouldn't this fall under looking at within that master plan a scheme of the necessary parking and how something like this would inhibit or enhance however it may fall out, something along that line?
Yes, sir. One of the things that we talked to you about during the budget process is doing a Landa Park master plan. And part of that process is to look at parking, to look at connectivity throughout the park. We're actually bringing that contract to you at the next meeting, January 25th. But we did talk about it during the budget process quite a bit. So I think that that would be a reasonable look to study parking as a whole and see what the impact is of something like this on the rest of the park.
I had several calls and lots of emails about residents who are not happy about this at all. A couple of them asked, and I don't remember when we first started talking, I wasn't on council, but I sat through the meetings and listened to when we did Prince Holmes. But they were curious as to why during the week that there would still be charged parking, you know, when the majority of the use they feel like would be residential. I don't know if y'all, if you, just because the other one was already 7 days a week and y'all are staying the same, kind of like with the price of the parking?
That is the reason, yes, ma'am.
I know we have quite a few people out there that like to speak their minds.
Any other questions?
Yeah,
Okay.
and I just want to make a comment. I really, the trend that I see developing here with these fees, with parking in particular, I mean, we started out at Prince Holmes, which I was against, and now we're going to this area, which I'm against. I just see us, we're just creeping up, fees here, fees there. Doesn't set well with me when I can remember Prince Holmes when they fenced it off where nobody could even go there. And now we're becoming so money hungry, and we're pinching at every location we can, and I think this is setting a bad precedent and a trend to even affecting Landa Park. So it doesn't set well with us and where we're at, and I'm against it, and the folks that are behind me are against it.
Sure.
Anyone wishing to address this item, if you'll please step up to the podium, state your name and address, please limit to 5 minutes or less.
Good evening. Carol Bissett, 149 Kentucky, Circle Arts Theater Board of Directors. So I'm just here to say we really, if this comes to pass, the paid parking, we really appreciate the city working with us to find a way to exempt our theater goers from having to pay the fee. So I'm not sure what that would look like. We have to print out some sort of theater parking pass and make sure all of our volunteers and customers got one to put on their dash. I'm not sure. So however it's going to work, we would work it out if we need to, but thank you for helping us to do that. A concern that I have is that when the parking lot right across the street from the theater, such as marked on the map, if that goes to paid parking, then I'm concerned that the parking lot that's there on our property adjoining the theater, that those people who want to park there during the day to use the park or go on the river or whatever would fill up our own theater lot instead. So I'm not sure where our volunteers, our cast and musicians and all would park when they come for rehearsals during the first part of the summer on Saturdays and Sundays, or our customers for the Sunday matinees. Most of our summer musical shows are at night, and so we're not worried about the summer parking during the night, evenings. But on Saturdays and Sundays, our Sundays matinees, we certainly are. And I will say we're in our 49th season in Landa Park, Circle Arts Theater. And this past summer, for the first time, we had this parking problem. For our summer musical Sunday matinees, we had folks come, the matinees are at 2 o'clock on Sunday, and the folks would come with their ticket in hand, drive to the lots where the theater is, the ones indicated and the one right there next to our property, not find a place to park, drive around the swimming pool lot, drive into the parks, drive around the entire Landa Park, and then 30 minutes later go home and call us and say, I want my money back. I bought a ticket and I couldn't find a place to park. So this is the first year that we've actually had to refund ticket prices because people could not park to come to our theater, so that really hurts. So anyway, thank you for considering the theater. We really appreciate it.
Anyone else wishing to address this item?
I'm sorry.
Just stay standing, Bob.
Get your exercise, Bob. Just keep going back and forth. Hi, I'm Suzanne Williams at 615 Lochner, and I really do appreciate the challenge you have with river management. I do, however, want you to please recognize that there are other patrons of the park or to this venue other than us, than the tubers, if you will. And I don't say that the negative connotation, but there are runners and there are walkers, and I'm a season pass holder to Circle Arts, and so that came to mind. What am I going to do? And you're willing to work through that. There are people like me who just want to go and have a picnic next to the river or just enjoy Landa Park. And in the summertime, the pool parking lot does get full. And because it is, and this is, I know from running, so it's early in the morning or after work, and it's not necessarily during your, quote, prime hours, but it does happen. And I'm just really opposed to the parking, and this is kind of like our little nugget of parking left and overflow. I am concerned about the challenges that the Parks Department would have with that, with enforcement and the additional staffing that Stacy needs. So there are a lot of concerns with that. Again, I do appreciate the challenge. I don't have a solution for you guys. I just really would hope that you'd consider not supporting this, especially when we have all these challenges before us without solutions. I think there's just too many unanswered questions, and so again, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to address this item?
David Shane, Fogle 2107 North Crest Drive. I'm hoping I'm the last person, but I was hoping there'd be some suggestion along the line of helping the local people who buy a season pass to swim in Landa Park, the Landa Park Dolphins, and the people who rent Landa House, which contributes to a pretty large percentage of revenue that covers the expenses of running Landa House. I'm not against generating revenue, obviously, that's what I'm in the business of doing. But by charging for parking in an area so close to a non-charged parking lot, a free parking lot that's with a stone's throw from a charged parking lot, the age group of the people that you're asking to pay the $10 will soon find out that there's a free parking lot not very far away. They already are, especially this summer with the low flow that we've had, or the summer previous, with the low flow in the Guadalupe, we've had overflow traffic, and we've had people carrying tubes in Landa Park that are going to the river. And that's just the beginning. Once you start charging the $10, how do you control the people from parking in Landa Park? But I also want to be part of the solution, not just part of the problem. So here's my suggestion. If we're controlling or having some measure of control to let people go to the Circle Arts Theater, or the park workers that would be parking, or the people who play miniature golf, why could we not do that same, or have that same measure of control for the parking lot there at the Olympic pool? And that would be my question to whoever. I know it may be a little late for that, but it's not I don't think too late that it could not be implemented. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Bob Wolf at 244 Dimmitt Drive. And this issue has come up on the Parks and Advisory Board. It has been discussed in regards to the parking proposal. And when we met with the River Advisory Management Committee, there was heated debate. And it was basically, most of the park board members being opposed to the proposed parking. I'm not an official member of the Park Advisory member now, but I can tell you that the reason why they were by and large opposed to this parking proposal was of the impact it would have on Landa Park. The times that this lot will probably be full for tubers is also a time when people use this lot for family reunions and picnics. Not all of them have $10 to come into a public park. They were invited to a family reunion. They weren't expected to pay $10 to come to a public park. At that time, we're affecting the basic premises of what a public park should be: free and open to all, regardless of their economic circumstances. So you're really affecting the park, and I do believe, because I'll do it myself next summer if this is implemented, I'll park in the free lot next to the swimming pool, and so will most of the other people. And as soon as they find out that it's free, and then everyone that wants to use that swimming pool is either going to have to pay $10 to swim by going to this lot, or they won't be able to find a place to go park at all. So I realize it's a situation, it's an economic situation, but we make millions from the river recreation industry, directly and indirectly, through hotel hot taxes, through property taxes for all the people employed in the recreation business, through the direct sales of beer, convenience store sales, restaurant sales, hotel, and we're worried about 193,000. Let's not affect a public park, the crown jewel of New Braunfels. And I can tell you that there are other people on the Parks Advisory Board that we had a heated debate. And if there is, if you would like to, I'd recommend it to, as another alternative, would be to send this issue to the Parks Advisory Committee, since it affects Landa Park, before you take action on it tonight. Thank you.
Julie Crouch, 1222 Bluff Creek Circle. Thank you. I hope that you'll deny this first reading. I'm opposed to the parking fee, and especially where it is. I have multiple handicaps, and I have felt that I could not use the park to put in a tube at Hinman Island on the weekends. I had no idea of the pass. But in my income as well, retired, limited in fixed income, I guess you'd say, $10 is prohibitive. And if it's prohibitive for me, I know that there are a lot of citizens that it is also prohibitive for, and I agree totally that the parks are essential. They keep crime down by providing recreation. This is the only city I know of, it's the only city I've lived where I have to pay to use a picnic table, although I've paid my taxes. And I don't want to pay for parking too. It's time to think as a big city. It's not 12,000 anymore, it's not 16, 23,000, it's almost 60,000, and it's growing, as was mentioned in the first item comments. It's time, use some of the city development board money to bring in someone to build a parking garage. I'm sure the outfitters will be glad to run a bus from a centrally located parking garage to the river. Don't touch Landa Park. We had an opportunity, I thought, when the golf course was revamped, to put in a parking garage there, but I'm sure that it would have been highly disputed. But there is some place in town to put a parking garage. Austin has the advantage of having state garages that are used on football games, river fireworks shows, concerts on the river. Again, river management is helped out by having those already built garages that people pay $5 to park and $3 for a bus ride down to the lake. We could do something like that here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address this item?
I'd like to say that my statement earlier still stands, that I'm all for revenue neutral. But in this particular case here with this, I think that the challenges outweigh the benefit of trying to get to revenue neutral in this particular manner. I think that the constituents that came forward brought up some very good points that I hadn't even thought about. And I think that even some of this suggested of solutions, if it would pass, need to be explored. But I think this whole thing needs to be explored further before we take an affirmative action on this.
I'd like to thank the River Activities Committee and everybody who participated. We've heard you loud and clear, and I've always been a big proponent of listening to your advice and implementing it and not going against it. But in this situation, on this particular issue, because of the residents that reached out to me, overwhelmingly, I didn't have anybody in support of it. Please don't take it personally that I am not in support of this.
Ditto.
I don't have a problem if we, as I think Ron suggested, have the Land to Park review, what was it called, Stacy?
Master plan.
Master plan. Take this into consideration and make that a part of their study before we take any action. I don't think that would be an inappropriate route to follow.
I think I heard more than enough direction, and I doubt I'm going to hear any motion other than direction. So with that, I believe staff got some direction, and there is no motion on this item. Item E, discuss and consider approval of the first, oh wait, I was asked for a break. Apologize. We'll take a break. We'll be in recess. Consider approval of the first reading of an ordinance repealing Chapter 18, Article 5 of the Code of Ordinances and replacing it with a new Chapter 18, Article 5 that doesn't reference fire alarms or the fire department.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. I'm Patrick O'Connell, the Fire Marshal for the City of New Braunfels. What we're going to ask you to do is repeal Chapter 18, Article 5, false alarms, that currently references false fire alarms in the fire department, and replace it with a version that does not reference false fire alarms or the fire department, so that there is no conflict with Chapter 18 and the ordinance that recently passed creating the fire department's cost recovery program. This will not have an impact on the police department's operations, as they've not historically registered commercial fire alarms or billed for false fire alarm responses.
What's your frequency of having false fire alarms?
We run approximately 450 to 500 fire alarm calls a year, and 95% of them are false.
And so you're not asking for any mitigation rates for
Yes,
that?
sir, we would. What this would allow us to do is where the Chapter 18 currently charges a service fee of $50 that escalates to $100. Our cost recovery fee would be about $180, which is the cost of the hourly operation of a fire truck.
So this just allows, instead of having two contradictory items, it just allows for the cost recovery one?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
And this is commercial, is that correct?
Yes, sir, it does not include the
Residential.
fire detectors at your home.
And you said 95% false alarm?
Yes, ma'am, roughly.
Wow.
Move for approval.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. Anyone wishing to address this item, if you please step up to the podium, state your name and address, please limit to 5 minutes or less. Okay, with that, we've got a motion, a second. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by stating aye. Aye. Those opposed, please signify by stating nay. And the motion passes unanimously. Item F, public hearing and approval of the first reading of an ordinance regarding the rezoning of 84.65 acres out of the AM Eisenhower Survey, abstract number 1, subdivisions number 61 and 62, Comal County, Texas, from R2A single and two-family districts and APD agricultural pre-development districts to August Fields Planned Development District with a concept plan. Mr. Looney.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Good evening. The subject vacant property is comprised of almost 85 acres between Farm to Market 1101 and Alvis Lane. It is currently zoned R2A and APD. The applicant is proposing a planned development with a 1.75 acre commercial tract with a base zoning of C1A, and the remaining is single-family residential lots with a base zoning of ZHA. The major differences between the base zoning and the applicant's proposed development standards on this proposed planned development are smaller minimum lot widths, corner side yard setbacks. The applicant is also not proposing zero lot line homes, even though the base zoning is ZHA. They would maintain the standard 5-foot side setbacks on these homes. Within the commercial tract, which would be here, the applicant is proposing to prohibit certain auto-related uses. The applicant is also proposing additional residential landscaping requirements, maximum building lot coverage, underground utilities, and is including an east-west collector through the development that is not shown on our regional transportation plan. That would route like so. The Planning Commission and staff recommend approval with the following conditions. One, that the applicants remove Note 5 from the concept plan. It lists those prohibited uses in the C1A area, the commercial area. Those are already listed in their development standards. Number 2, that the detail plan illustrate the location of the 10-foot wide shared use path that is required by the city's hike and bike trails plan. Number 3, that a detail plan be submitted for the property designated for commercial use prior to plat approval for the commercial tract. And then 4, approval of the TIA by the city and TxDOT and any mitigation measures incorporated into the project. Also, staff recommends approval of a corresponding future land use plan amendment for the proposed commercial tract, which will appear on the city council agenda with the second reading of this request if it is approved today. We mailed notices to 28 owners of property within 200 feet. As of December 15th, we have received 2 responses in favor and 1 in opposition. There we go. Thank you.
I have a question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
If it stayed as R2 instead of the ZHA, based on the number of units they're proposing, do you know how many more units they can build with the ZHA versus the R2? How much more dense are we allowing?
I didn't do that calculation, but I can get a calculation for you on that. The ZHA does allow the smaller lots, but with what they're proposing, they're actually proposing a little bit larger than what the ZHA would allow if it were just ZHA straight. But I can do a calculation for you that shows the difference between their plan development proposed as well as what it would be if the portion that is R2 remained R2.
Okay, this is a public hearing, so let's open it up to a public hearing. Anyone wishing to address this item, if you'll please step up to the podium, state your name and address, please limit to 5 minutes or less.
Chris Van Herdy, 410 North Seguin Avenue. I'm the engineer of record on this, and if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them for you. I'm here to speak for this project. I wanted to highlight to you that the trails that are part of the recommendation for the city staff, the trail plan does not represent the trail to be on this property, but it is something that is under discussion with a development agreement that is in the works.
Any other questions of council? Anyone else wishing to address this item? This is a public hearing. Okay, with that, we'll close public hearing. Do I hear a motion?
I'll move to approve with staff recommendations.
Second it? Okay. We got a motion and a second for approval with staff recommendations. Any further discussion of council? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please signify by stating nay. And the motion passes. Item G, public hearing and approval of the first reading of an ordinance regarding a Type 2 special use permit to allow the short-term rental of a house in the R3 multifamily district addressed at 1683 Keeler Avenue. And please let the minutes reflect that Councilwoman Edwards has recused herself.
Thank you. The subject tract is located on Keeler Avenue and the Guadalupe River, east of Seguin Avenue on the east side of IH-35. It is currently zoned R3, having been rezoned to R3 in 1976 with the other lots along this strip. The applicants currently do live at the site. R3 allows short-term rentals, but because the structure on the lot is a house, an SUP is required for approval. The home on the site has 5 sleeping areas, or bedrooms, and some common rooms. Therefore, this short-term rental would be required to maintain a minimum of 5 paved parking spaces with a maximum of 6, of which there is currently room on the site for. Planning Commission and staff recommend approval with the following conditions. Those conditions are the standard conditions we include with all short-term rental SUPs. One, that the property remain in its current state with no improvements or additions, unless the site plan, of course, is amended per City Council. That all supplemental standards for short-term rentals in our code be observed. That the maximum number of persons allowed to reside in this short-term rental is 2 adults per sleeping area, plus an additional 4 adults per residence. In this case, 14 would be the maximum. And number 4, parking. That they provide a minimum of 5 off-street parking spaces or a maximum of 6. Before the short-term rental permit is issued, the applicant will need to demonstrate that the parking has been reduced to the maximum of 6 as per the site plan. We mailed notices to 17 owners of property within 200 feet, and we received no responses in favor, 2 responses in opposition. Those 2 responses do account for 3% of the surrounding property. There we go. Thank you.
Chris, could you put the colored map up, please?
Sure.
I have a couple of
The
questions.
zoning map?
Yeah, yes, please. That one.
Oh, there's the current zoning.
Go back one.
That's
That
the
one.
future land use?
Currently, the first three properties, I guess it's east of the red zone property, do have multi-family units on them. But are there any overnight rentals on any of the properties going easterly from that point? Or are they all truly residential, not overnight rental properties?
From what we understand, I don't have all the numbers too far down, but the first few are not short-term rentals today that we are aware of at the moment.
Okay, so we're not
But we
aware
can-
of any as you go further down to the east?
I mean, there could be. We can definitely get that information and provide it at the second
Yeah,
reading.
well, I'd like to see that, please.
Okay, you bet.
Okay, this is a public hearing, so let's open it up to public hearing. Anyone wishing to address this item, if you'll please step up to the podium. State your name and address. Please limit to 5 minutes or less.
Lee Edwards, 311 Hunters Creek Drive. The owners of the property weren't able to be here because of a medical emergency. I am their agent on the property and wanted to just come in and give you a few highlights. Their house was originally an R3. When they bought it, they converted it out. It does have 2 kitchens with a 3rd kitchen that's been stubbed off. They could convert it back, but they chose not to in the current time, so they've been using it as a personal residence. You're correct that these first 3 here are apartments. All of these houses face Bobolink and not Keeler.
Right.
All of these are back fences and backyards, and that goes to here. These are all duplexes that are here, and then these across here are single-family residents. So that's the situation. They have not flooded. This is well out of the embankment, and so they could convert it back to R3 if they needed to, but they chose to go the SUP route instead. And if you have any questions,
When
I
you
can
say
answer
they
them.
could convert it back, I mean, they'd have to request a zoning change to do that.
No, it's currently zoned R3. Their use is residential. So they are zoned appropriately to be R3.
Okay. Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to address this item? Okay, with that, we'll close public hearing. Do I hear a motion?
Move for approval with staff recommendation.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion of council? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please signify by stating nay.
Nay.
Was that
2.
2 nays and 4 yeses? Okay, so the motion passes. Item H, public hearing and approval of the first reading of an ordinance regarding the rezoning of approximately 8.5 acres, lots 1 through 20 of the Greenwald subdivision located west of the intersection of Cypress Bend Cove and Rolling Rapids Drive from R1 Single Family District to Green Wall Planned Development District with detailed plan.
Thank you. Subject property is situated at the terminus of Cypress Bend Cove along the Guadalupe River near Green. It is currently zoned R1 and is being developed with 18 single-family residential lots. The applicant is proposing a planned development because he wants to adjust the side setbacks so that the future homeowners can utilize the side yards for patios, decks, barbecuing areas, et cetera. So lots 1 through 3, 1, 2, and 3, would maintain their 5-foot setbacks on the side here, but would have no setbacks on the front or these sides.
Within the subdivision.
Within the subdivision, yes, sir, that's correct. And then the side setbacks for all of the lots along the river here, those would be reduced to 0. And so while there wouldn't be setbacks, side setbacks, the houses would, of course, still need to meet building codes for fire separation and so forth, and the applicant is aware of that and is intended to meet those. Planning Commission and staff recommend approval of this planned development. We mailed notices to 11 owners of property within 200 feet. We received 1 response in opposition and no responses in favor. There's the opposition. Thank you.
Any questions?
Chris, am I correct along Cypress Bend Cove on this subdivision or development side for lots 1, 2, and 3? Isn't there a stone wall all along that?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
So that area is really shaded, blocked off from the recipient or the property owners across Cypress Bend Cove.
Yes, sir, wall and landscaping
Yes.
and it's gated as
Thank
well. Here's the one along Cypress Bend Cove.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay, this is a public hearing. Anyone wishing to address this item, if you'll please, it's open to a public hearing. Anyone wishing to address this item, if you'll please step up to the podium, state your name and address, please limit to 5 minutes or less.
My name is Bert Dement. I'm the owner-developer of Cypress Bend Cove. Is there any questions? I just came to respond or answer they may have.
Yeah, I have a curiosity question, Bert, on those 3 lots. Which is the front and which is the side? Is the front of those 3 lots green wall on the green walled side, or are they these?
That's the side.
Which is the front of those 3 lots?
When we construct the houses, the garages, the front door, everything else will come off the private street of Greenwald.
Okay.
The areas toward the street are going to function as side yards.
Okay. I was just trying to figure out which was theoretically the front. Thank you.
That answer your question?
Anyone else wishing to address this item?
Move for approval.
Okay, with that, we'll close public hearing. I hear a motion in favor.
Second.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please signify by stating nay. And the motion passes. Item I, public hearing and approval of the first reading of an ordinance rezoning approximately 15.07 acres out of the AM as now 11 League Grant, addressed as at 1141 Highway 46 South from R3L multifamily low density with a special use permit to allow 16 units per acre, C1A neighborhood business and APD agricultural pre-development districts to an R3H multifamily high density district. Mr. Looney.
Thank you. That grant comes up quite a bit.
I just sort of kind of try to bleed through and act like I know how to say it.
Does anybody know how to say it, just out of curiosity? No? Okay.
Let's see, this tract, 15 acres on the north side of Highway 46, east of Stonegate subdivision. Several previous rezoning cases and rezoning case attempts have resulted in the current myriad of zoning districts on the subject property today. It's currently C1A, APD, and R3L with an SUP for 16 units per acre. The applicant is proposing to consolidate the zoning to R3H to allow for a multifamily development, future land use plan, would require an amendment to the future land use plan if this rezoning case is approved. And so again, that would be on a future agenda, the second reading of this case. Planning Commission and staff recommend approval, along with a corresponding amendment to the future land use plan. We mailed 24 notices to owners of property within 200 feet. We received 3 responses in favor and 1 in opposition. Oops. This is showing those in favor. The one in opposition constituted a small area, so we wanted to make sure we zoomed in so everybody could see where that is. Off of Stone Trail, number 18.
Number 8.
So it's this property here.
Yep.
That was opposed.
Or the little sliver.
Planning and zoning seem to have a concern about drainage, and we're asking for increased attention, but because of straight zoning districts cannot be conditioned.
Yes, sir.
Is there a concern by you about drainage?
No, sir, not at all. As long as, with all developments, they meet the drainage criteria in our codes, then that is satisfactory. And the applicant, of course, would have to, by code, would be required to meet those drainage requirements. What happens a lot of times, and what happened at Planning Commission, is a lot of citizens, I say a lot, at least one citizen did get up to speak with concerns about drainage. As I understand it, they have had subsequent conversations with the applicant, and they were satisfied and withdrew their opposition.
Question, what traffic impact study's been done over there with this?
This is Highway 46 coming in from Seguin. Does anybody need to say more?
If one will be required, I mean, that would occur at a later time, not as part of the rezoning for this request.
Well, that's what would concern me is, I mean, with the traffic issues that they have there already, I mean, traffic will back up from I-35 clear up to Clear Springs, you know, summertime, especially with peak traffic.
Yes, sir.
And those people that live along that stretch are highly impacted, and yeah, that'd be a major concern.
Yes, sir. And I believe that's what's driving the improvements that will take place on 1101 as well as Alvis, and then whatever TxDOT may consider in the future for improvements to Highway 46.
I'll tell you, this is my district, and only half of Stonegate subdivision is my district, but now that Stonegate cuts through and you can go through the Wingust subdivision and get out there through Alvis, at least they have some options now, where 2 or 3 years ago, you didn't have any other option other than to go in and out of Stonegate. But I have a lot of clients who live in Stonegate, and they're able to scoot on out through the back ways, and it's not as bad. It's still, traffic still stinks out of 46, but I don't think having this be, you know, high density versus low density, I don't feel like the zoning is going to change the density that much to where it had this like huge
Well,
impact
particularly
on
with the SUP that's there for the higher density anyway.
already, exactly.
On part of it. Chris, has the applicant given any, I know they haven't done a plan yet, but have they given any indication of what the ingress and egress might be into this
I believe
addition?
the applicant is here and may be
Yeah.
able to speak to that, and in fact, I think we included some.
There's a drawing in there.
Yeah.
Here we go. We included some drawings in here,
Okay.
and
Maybe I
they're
missed
loaded with
those.
PowerPoint if you were planning to go through those and share those.
Okay, this is a public hearing. So let's open it up to the public hearing. Anyone wishing to address this item, if you'll please step up to the podium, state your name and address, and please limit it to 5 minutes or less.
Right there, I missed it. Oh, no, that's the old special use permit.
My name's Larry Bundick. I live at 1133 Highway 46 South, which is right next to the property in question. I've lived there about 40 years, so I've seen a lot of changes in the traffic. When I moved there, I'd see 8 or 10 cars a day, and that I have trouble getting out of my driveway. I'm just past the Stonegate entrance, probably 250 feet from the intersection. I guess when I try to get home sometimes, it's a challenge because I have to curve around the people trying to get into Stonegate, to get in the turning lane, to get into my driveway. From what I understand, they plan on putting one of the entrances next to my property, which is from where my driveway is. We're looking at maybe another 250 feet down down 46. 2 years ago, I guess, they came and wanted to build 178 units, two-story buildings. Understand now we want to do 258 units with three-story buildings with 127 houses in the back of the property in a future time. Like I say, you know, traffic is atrocious out there on 46, and you put that many families in that area, unless they do something with 46, I'm not sure. I may never get home. But anyway, I appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Zach Brown, and I'm the representative owner for the property. Brass Real Estate Funds is the owner of the land, and Magi Real Estate Services. We've been in business now for 25 years. We're based in San Antonio, and the focus of the business has been on multifamily development and investment, as well as office investment and management. On December 1st, the zoning proposal was heard by Planning Commission. We received the recommendation for approval for the R3H zoning, and it referenced what Chris had referenced, which was a reduction in our drainage from our property to the property to the east. Since then, I've actually met with the property owners and toured their property and looked at their main concern, which is a large pond that they have on their property. And their concern is not actually, it was a bit of a confusion, but their concern is not actually additional drainage coming in, but basically to make sure that their pond doesn't change. And so the goal is, and what I've agreed to with what I've agreed to with them is to basically work with them and with our engineer to come up with a plan that detains the appropriate amount of water to where their pond isn't affected by our improvements. So the main concerns outlined were the drainage. Also, the primary concern that I've heard from pretty much everyone is traffic. How do I go to the plan that we're proposing? Okay. So, in addition to the improvements to the other roads there along Highway 46. We are proposing to have this road constructed from Highway 46 to the 35-acre tract that we own to the back of this property. Part of this is so that we have the main entrance of the complex here off of that road so that the loading isn't directly onto Highway 46. And so that was one of our main issues also, because traffic is such an issue there. We wanted to make sure that the main entrance is set off of that. So this proposed roadway is also going to be another step in connecting 46 further north, the property to the rear that we own, which is the 35-acre tract. The road, as it continues, would then go up to another property that's being built off of Sanger Halley Road or Sanger Hall Road. So I think this plan and this project can add to the regional connectivity that is in that area, and so that's just another thing that we're working on there. So in conclusion, we think that this project can be developed in a way that addresses the needs and desires of the neighbors surrounding the city, as well as our own. And if you guys have any questions for me, I'm available.
So this is a gated community?
Actually, we don't propose a gate at this point.
Well, I'm looking here at exit gate. I'm looking here at another gate up at the top, right?
Within their apartment complex. Within, you show gates within this is just a concept?
Concept plan that the architect did, but yeah, it hasn't gone that far yet.
Yeah, Zach,
zoning step one. Sorry?
The gentleman that just spoke that is a direct neighbor. If you were in his shoes, what would you do?
I'd probably be here just like he is today. I think, and also, and I've met with Lawrence in the past, and we stood out in his front yard, and it was about 5 or 6 o'clock, and I understand what his concerns are. The traffic there at, I believe, the intersection there at Stonegate Drive, or it's, there's a lot of cars backed up going back towards Seguin, going to Stonegate, going to the additional subdivisions further east. So I understand the concern. I think there are some additional options we could work with him on, as far as perhaps, working on a connection from our property as an entrance into his, if that was something he wanted to work with us on. But basically, we're open to coming to a consensus there, but I think primarily the traffic there is an issue.
Do you know if you're planning on doing 2-story or 3-story?
I believe we would do 3-story. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
The answer is no, I don't know, but more than likely, yes.
My only concern there is because you are backing up to existing residential, even with the buffer and stuff like that, if you go to build a 3-story that overlooks those houses that have been there for 10 years or so, you might be more challenging than a 2-story.
Sure. I think, a lot of those items or I think a response to that is outlined in the building code, I think, with regard to setbacks. I mean, in our current proposed plan, we're looking at least a 100-foot buffer from the Stonegate, from the backyards, the back fences of the Stonegate neighbors. If I recall, you might help me out here on there's a masonry wall requirement for multifamily built next to single family. So I think that's going to help with sights and sounds. But also, there's a vegetative buffer requirement, and then with the road in this location, that's going to add another 60 feet of right-of-way. So, we're talking about 100 feet minimum of a setback from that masonry wall that we'd be required to build. And that's just per city code as it is. Okay.
Cool. And thank you. I appreciate you reaching out to me to ask questions in advance. It's always nice.
I also did check with the, pardon?
I was just going to say, and you'd be willing to work with Mr.
Bundick
on if he was interested in having a cut-through off of your road instead of off of 46 to his property. I don't know if that's feasible.
Yeah, as long as it, I mean, this is going to be a public road, so, as long as that works with the city transportation, I think that it's fine with us.
You were going to say, did you reach out to the school district?
I did, and I spoke with the deputy superintendent, where's my notes? Terry Morosky, and then the CFO, this is of Comal ISD, David Anderson, and this is in the Freiheit Elementary District, which has, or elementary school area, that has sufficient capacity for more students, according to them. The middle school, I guess is it Comal Middle School, is currently at capacity. He did say that there are 2 new middle schools being built that are going to be completed in 2008. This project, if everything went according to plan, which most things don't, but if it did, would be completed toward the end of 2007. So I think that would probably work up or link up well if there were any middle school students living in the complex.
Right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else wishing to address this item? This is a public hearing. Okay, with that, we'll close public hearing. Do I hear any
Move
further?
for approval with staff recommendations and the changing the future land use designation.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Any further discussion of council? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please signify by stating nay.
Nay.
And 1 in opposition. Okay. Item J, discuss and consider approval of a waiver from the requirement to construct sidewalks along Old Bear Creek Road for the Wiedenfels subdivision final plat. Mr. Looney.
Thank you. The applicant is platting 20-plus acres into 2 lots. It is located in the ETJ on Old Bear Creek Road, north of Highway 46 West. The applicant is requesting a waiver from the requirement to construct the sidewalk along Old Bear Creek Road. The plat does not qualify for an exemption that we have in our code because while the proposed lots have at least 100 feet of frontage, the right-of-way for Old Bear Creek Road is not at least 60 feet wide. These are the two lots that they are proposing. Planning Commission and staff recommend approval of this waiver due to the rural residential nature of the tract with large lots and large front setbacks and excessive frontage. As with all sidewalk waiver requests, City Council may deny the request, approve the request, or approve escrowing the funds for the city to construct the sidewalk at a future date. But in this case, because of the rural nature, staff recommends approval. And as you can see, the nearest sidewalk to these large lots is at least 2,250 feet away. That's almost half a mile. Thank you.
What size lots are you talking about?
Size lots?
Started as a 20-something, right?
And they have it sectioned out where one's 5 and one's 15.
Mm-hmm. There we go, thank you. There we go, 15 and 5.
Do I hear a motion?
Can we hear from that? Is he?
Mike Short, 2461 Loop 337 with Urban Civil, and Mr. Weidenfeld's here as well to answer any questions that you may have. Again, it being a large lot subdivision, very rural. It was originally a county-maintained road. Sidewalks just doesn't seem to make sense. Thank you.
Mr. Wiedenfeld?
David Wiedenfeld, 459 Old Bear Creek Road, which is in the county. We're selling 5 acres, well, a little over 5 acres, whatever the city required, you know, had to be 5.01 acres. Anyhow, just to sell to our daughter and son-in-law to build a house and get started, you know. They're tired of renting and couldn't find anything anywhere else, so we decided, well, we'll go ahead and sell them some of ours. And I mean, I can count the cars, I think 6 total people, 12 round trip traffic-wise. I don't, and anybody else drive down the road, they're lost, because all it is just a circle. But anyhow, that's the reason for why we're selling it. We're not selling it to, you know, to a bunch of lots and making money from other individuals. So we were all born and raised here in the Braunfels and plan to stay here, and that's all we're doing it for. So,
do I hear
any questions?
motion?
Yeah, and I'll make the motion. Mr. Wiedenfeld, everybody knows I'm a big supporter of sidewalks. In your case, in your situation, I would move that we waive the sidewalks in this.
Okay, we thank you. Appreciate it. Go ahead.
Because I never, ever vote to waive sidewalks either, but.
Well, if you want sidewalks out there, I don't think anybody's gonna use it, because they're gonna keep walking on the road, so. Thank you.
We got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by stating aye. Aye. Those opposed, please signify by stating nay. And the motion passes. Item K, discuss and consider approval of a waiver to allow escrow for the cost of a 4-foot wide sidewalk adjacent to Klein Road rather than construction of a sidewalk for the Dean subdivision master plan. Mr. Nolini.
Thank you. This one's a little bit different. The city's the applicant here. The property owner is platting 32.5 acres on Klein Road, as you can see here in this aerial, platting that into 134 residential lots. The applicant is, the Klein Road 2013 bond project, I should mention first, does identify a 10-foot wide shared use path to be constructed on the south side of Klein Road and a 6-foot wide sidewalk that would be constructed on the north side of Klein Road adjacent to to this property. The developer submitted their master plan intending to construct the 4-foot wide public sidewalk as required by the city code. The city, though, is requesting that the developer escrow the cost of the 4-foot wide sidewalk adjacent to Klein Road, as the escrow will help pay for a portion of the 6-foot wide sidewalk adjacent to the subdivision that is part of the Klein Road bond project. And the owner is not opposed to this request of the city that the escrow the funds instead of building the sidewalk at this time. Planning Commission and staff both recommend approval of this.
Do I hear a motion?
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please signify by stating nay. And the motion passes unanimously. Item L, discuss and consider approval of a waiver from the requirement to construct sidewalks through the Brant Ranch subdivision master plan.
Thank you. This one may seem a little familiar. The applicant is platting 424 acres into 305 residential lots in the ETJ on Highway 46 west of its intersection with 2722. Applicants requesting a waiver from the sidewalk requirements. The City Council denied their similar request back in July, but the applicant has revised their master plan to address some of those concerns that Council had. Now, with this request, the applicant's development will still have 7 lots that do not meet the code allowances for the automatic exemption from the sidewalk requirements. And that is that the width of the lots be at least 100 feet and that the roadways adjacent have at least 60 feet of right-of-way width. And so in this instance, staff must go with the code and recommend denial of the requested waiver of the sidewalks. Planning Commission recommends approval, however, of the internal sidewalk waiver. But both staff and Planning Commission recommend denial of any waiver request from the sidewalks that would be required along Highway 46. Thank you.
Any discussion of council?
So now your recommendation is just on 46 that they have the sidewalks and not within the subdivision?
The Planning Commission recommends approval of the waiver to the internal sidewalks and denial of what would be on 46. Staff recommends denial of both the internal and along 46.
Oh, okay.
So Planning Commission differed from us on the recommendation.
And why don't they want to do the internal ones? Do they have a representative here?
Yes, I'll let them.
Yeah, I'd like to hear that too.
Would the representative like to come up to the podium, please? State your name and address, please limit to 5 minutes or less.
Hello, my name is Blaine Lopez. I'm with KFW Engineers. I live at 8531 Espanola Drive in Helotes, Texas. So I brought a little map here. It's actually 9 lots that we have. Okay, the highlighted lots are the ones that are not meeting the 100-foot frontage requirement to have the automatic exemption from sidewalks. So the code's kind of interesting. It says if one lot doesn't meet it, then all lots have to have sidewalks. So all the other lots are meeting the 100-foot or more frontage. The reason, as you can see on all of these lots, is that they're all at cul-de-sacs and knuckle-sacs, which there's no irregular shape provision in the code. And so they're also subject to the 100 lot of frontage. So what we've done is we set these lots up to where the 100-foot would be at the building line, so they would be, the building itself would have the same amount of setbacks as all the other lots. It's just at the frontage itself, like here, we can't physically get the 100-foot because of the fact that it's on that knuckle, and so we're limited on the amount of frontage that it has because of the pie shape of the lot itself. Very typical to see this on knuckles and cul-de-sacs. In fact, Copper Ridge, this is almost modeled after Copper Ridge. The same type of rural setup with the 1 acre lots, bar ditch sections for the streets so there's no curb to build a sidewalk on. So if it wasn't for these 9 lots, there wouldn't be a discussion here today, but the 9 lots are just being caused by the geometry of the street. There could be things that could be done. That could be, you could actually do a street stub out that would meet fire code and be 150 foot long so that could get the frontage. But at that point, it's really just building a street to get to the frontage. It's not really doing anything for fire because they would prefer to have that turnaround in there. So, I guess we're just asking for the waiver just for these 9 lots not meeting the 100 foot of frontage on a sidewalk. Along 46, we're more than happy to put sidewalks there. I've actually started talking with Brian Hoker over at TxDOT about those sidewalks. So as long as TxDOT is okay with them putting, because I've had experience in the past where TxDOT's actually not wanted us to put sidewalk because of future expansions they have coming on or utility conflicts that may be there. But as long as TxDOT's good with us putting sidewalks in the right of way, we're definitely open to putting sidewalks there.
Now, I don't know if you kept up with the history of us and sidewalks, but there's been some other subdivisions that kind of went along the same path you're going, where they did not put in sidewalks, and unfortunately there was a death of a young child in that particular subdivision. And so we had to hear those stories.
Sure.
And it was all due to, you know, someone not wanting to put in the sidewalks. I just, there's a lot of risk there, especially with the high-density subdivision that you have here, and kids surely would be in the area. I just can't understand why you would not want to have sidewalks.
Yeah, it's actually, this is more of a rural type subdivision than a high density. These are 1 acre lots. I think they're typically 120 by 300. So we're not anticipating it being a high density type subdivision. Again, if it wasn't for these 9 lots, it wouldn't even be a discussion item, because the fact that the code right now for a large lot subdivision is this is defined it in the code. There is no sidewalk requirement because of the nature of the way the roads are built. So it's a rural section, 24 foot of pavement with a bar ditch. Sometimes this bar ditch gets up to 3 foot deep. So you wouldn't really, you'd have to have a sidewalk kind of hanging off onto the side of a ditch in order to build it.
Mr. Lopez, have you had discussions with staff where they have made the comment that they feel the lots that are the problematic lots can be refigured to meet the minimum?
I've talked with them a little bit on it, on the planning side. There probably could be some done that could be made bigger. Like this street here, I could probably extend it out a little bit to get more frontage on it. But again, that's just building street to get to that frontage of the code. So it could be done. It could be done. It could just, it's adding more impervious cover over the recharge zone, which I don't know if we all want that, but if it had to be done to meet code requirements, that could be done.
Do I hear any further questions of council?
I recommend denial.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to deny. Any further questions of council? Okay. All those in favor of the denial, please signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please signify by stating nay. Okay. Waiver has been denied. Item M, discuss and consider approval of the waiver from the requirement to construct sidewalks along Charismatic Lane for the Green Pastures final plat.
Thank you. The applicant is platting 39 large residential lots with a private internal street off of Altwine Lane in the ETJ in Guadalupe County. The majority of the lots are 60 feet wide, as you can see here in this image, with a few between 41 and 57 feet in width around the cul-de-sac there. Sidewalks are not required on Altwine Lane down here because, again, the exemption that we've been talking about with the last few cases. But the applicant is requesting a waiver from the sidewalk requirements along their internal street here.
I'm sorry, I just realized that Lee Edwards recused on this one, which means I got a piece out.
Ah.
He didn't give me a heads up.
Lee Edwards did what?
Recused himself.
Why she recused herself? She didn't work for a deputy anymore.
Planning Commission recommends approval of the requested waiver. Staff recommends denial, as while the lots are large in area, their width results in the appearance and function as more of a suburban neighborhood where pedestrian safety is at concern, and that's why staff recommends denial. Thank you.
Does the applicant wish to speak?
Hello, Council. Stephen Hans, 410 North Seguin Avenue. This particular street was constructed approximately 10 years ago. So this street is already existing out there. And at the time when the street was constructed, the sidewalks were never required. And this particular property has gone through several replatting iterations and all the sidewalk waivers have been granted by the city. In addition, this street currently is a public right-of-way. The plat plans to change that to a private right-of-way. So this would become a private street. These are large lots. All these lots are greater than 1 acre. And this is, from a make sense standpoint, this location is roughly a half a mile along Altwine Lane from FM 725 and roughly 2.5 miles until you get to Klein Road. So this is way out there in between New Braunfels and Seguin. And Altwine Road has no sidewalks on it, nor is city staff requiring any sidewalks along Altwine Road. So this is, as you can see from the drawing here, this is way out along 725, and then even it's a half a mile off of 725. And so what my client is asking is, I think the city staff is, these are large lot, rural type lots which don't require sidewalks. However, this street that was constructed 10 years ago was built with a curb and gutter. And the city staff is saying to follow suit, a sidewalk should be associated with curb and gutter, which doesn't really, there's no necessity for that. And in these large lot mobile home subdivision, 3 miles outside of anywhere close to the closest sidewalk, it just doesn't make any sense to force these guys to build the sidewalks right here. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Stephen, you said something about it was going to be a private road. What you don't mean one that's maintained by the developer, do you?
It'd be one that's maintained by the homeowners association, yes.
Really?
So it's gated?
It will not be gated, but it will be a private road.
So the city won't maintain that road, is that correct?
That's correct. Right now, it's being maintained by Guadalupe County. It'll be a private road, private right-of-way.
And is that your understanding, Chris? Yes. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I don't know.
I'm concerned about the future as the population continues to grow in this direction and the schools in our stance on sidewalks.
Well, this far out, it may even be Seguin School District.
Pardon?
I think this far out, this may even be Seguin School District.
I think Altwine, though, goes to...
I think Altwine's just inside. I may be wrong, but I think that's right.
And I'll have to concur with Mayor Pro Tem's concern and position. You know, at one time, I think some of the other subdivisions along 46 at one time said, hey, we're way outside the city and you know, sidewalks should not be a concern, and there ended up being a regret. I think with the growth that's going on out at 725 and Altwine Road connecting over there and the growth that's going to be seen there, I'd have to concur with Mayor Pro Tem.
And this will be a private street.
Yeah, it's a shame because it's a beautiful piece of property, and having sidewalks there that are nice and flat where kids can play and be on their skateboards and use that whole area to play in, sidewalks would be a huge addition and a great selling point for you, I believe.
Okay, so yes, but even though there's no sidewalks along Altwine or along 725 and being 3 miles out?
I think it also, not to go back and forth or anything, it's just, I see the, kind of go back, you know, on the fence with it, but it also promotes community, sidewalks within the neighborhood itself. So not just about connectivity, just a comment.
You know, I'm not opposed to connectivity, but I guess I get concerned if we're talking about private roads. Chris, can you tell me if we have other private roads in the city where we require sidewalks? Is that common?
Sidewalks are required regardless of whether
it's private or public? Okay.
Do I hear a motion?
Move for denial.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for denial. All those in favor of the denial, please signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Those opposed to the denial, please signify by stating nay.
Nay.
Okay. The denial passes. Okay, with that, we're going to move to executive session.
I don't have, 5A is not necessary, sir.
Okay. In accordance with Texas Government Code, Subchapter D, the City Council may convene in closed session to discuss any of the following items. Any final action or vote will be taken in public. Item B, deliberate pending contemplated litigation, settlement offers, and matters concerning privileged and unprivileged client information deemed confidential by Rule 1.05 of the Texas Disciplinary Rules of Professional Conduct in accordance with Section 551.071 of the Texas Government Code, specifically Care West Land Limited versus Yantis Company and the City of New Braunfels, and Yantis Company versus the City of New Braunfels et al. And with that, we'll adjourn to executive session. That's the reason why he knows how to barely read and write. We're not back on yet, are we? We're back from executive session. No vote or action took place, and without any further objection, this meeting is adjourned.